This meeting is being held Friday, February 23rd, 2018 at Sheraton Gateway, Los Angeles. Catalina Clemente Room, 6101 West Century Boulevard, Los Angeles. I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to thank the schools and all other members of the public who have joined us today. For the sake of time, I will not be introducing those schools who've signed in, but we appreciate your presence. Part of calling this meeting to order today includes the Pledge of Allegiance. Could I please ask everyone to stand and join us in the pledge as led by my fellow board member and veteran, Donna Norton.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to agenda item 12, introduction of board members and staff. I'm Tammy Mendoza, current board president. Will the board members introduce themselves starting at my far left?
Sorry, I was distracted. Donna Norton, LVN member.
Paul Sellers, psychiatric technician member.
Good morning, John Deerking, public member.
Good morning, Paula Amazola de Herrera, public member.
Good morning, I'm Bernice Vasquez Martinez. I'm a public member and vice president of the board.
Good morning, Ken Maxey, public member, assembly appointee.
Alita Carpenter, public member.
Good morning, Cheryl Turner, public member.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that we have quorum. At this time, I would like the executive officer to please introduce herself and the staff present.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good morning, everybody. My name is Elaine Yamaguchi, executive officer. With me to my right, of course, our esteemed counsel, Kenneth Swenson. Over here, we have our nursing education consultants, Margarita Valdez, Faye Silverman, Jessica Gomez, and Beth De Silva. DeYoung, sorry about that. Out in the audience, we have Rochelle Lee, Jennifer Johnson, Samantha Kalma, Brian Vu, Geraldine Marcino, Jenny Penales, Jay Prouty, our hardworking VVNT PT staff. Oh, not the technically staff, of course. We have also Ms. Stephanie Whitley from the Division of Investigations.
Thank you. We also have legal counsel present. Would the counsel please introduce himself?
Thank you, Madam President. Kenneth L. Swenson, Senior Staff Counsel, Attorney 3, serving as Board Counsel.
Thank you. The Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians is required to hold public meetings and make policy decisions that protect health, safety, and welfare of California consumers. Public meeting agendas are prepared well in advance of the board meeting. Agenda requests for consideration must be clearly set forth in writing. The board requests that all items and supporting documents be included in the agenda, be received in Sacramento headquarters by the first day of the month preceding the month of the scheduled board meeting. In addition, if there are documents that you would like board members to timely review and consider relative to an agenda item, the board asks that you submit 15 copies of the document and provide the board an electronic version of the document. Please ensure that you redact any student names prior to copying the information. During today's meeting, public comment is welcome at any agenda item. When the item is taken up by the board, under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, the board may not take action on issues raised by public comment that are not on the agenda, other than to decide whether to schedule that issue for a future meeting. If any person wishes to address the board, please come forward to the podium when I call for public comment. It is helpful for the record if you state your name and the name of the organization you represent. However, you may remain anonymous if you wish. We have a full agenda today. In order to allow board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, I may limit the time to give each person who wishes to comment. Generally, we give 3 minutes. Please understand, this is because we want to hear from everyone and give all those who wish to do so a chance to comment. I would rather hear from everyone for 3 minutes instead of one person for 30 minutes. And if we could have you make your comments focused and relevant to the applicable agenda item and direct to the board. If you wish, it is acceptable for you to simply state that you agree with the previous speaker, or you may make an original statement. If I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, it is not because I intend to limit comment. So please raise your hand or come to the podium and I'll recognize you. The board appreciates your cooperation and assistance in this meeting, in meeting its legal mandate. So I want to thank the board members for our late evening last night. And I appreciate your dedication to the board and your service to the protection of the public. So let me talk for a moment about the agenda. There are formal break periods listed on the agenda. However, due to the large amount of items we have today, the only formal corporate break we'll take is lunch. Otherwise, if board members, staff, or audience members need to take a personal break, feel free to do so on your own. We will not be stopping proceedings. I only ask that you work as quiet as possible when leaving the room, as not to disrupt business being conducted by the board. So we're going to get started. We're on agenda item 13, board meeting minutes. We're going to review and adopt November 16 through 17, 2017, and December 21, 2017 board minutes. Do board members have any questions or corrections?
If there's no errors or omissions, Madam Chair, I would move the minutes of the November 16, 17 meeting as submitted.
Cheryl Turner, second.
So we have a motion to accept the minutes as written. There are no omissions. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Is there a second, Madam Chair?
Yes, that's Cheryl.
Thank you. Donna?
Abstain, I was not present.
Paul?
I vote to accept it. Yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carried. That brings us to agenda item 14, the election of the board officers.
We can do the minutes from the December 18th meeting.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the December 18th board minutes.
Madam Chair, if there are no errors or omissions, I would move the minutes from the December 18th meeting.
Cheryl Turner, second.
Okay. So we have a motion to accept the board minutes from December 18th. And we have a second on that. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Now we'll move on to agenda item 14. the election of board officers.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Kenneth Swenson, Staff Counsel to the Board, and I've been asked to serve as the chair for the election of officers this year. The rules of the Board do not provide for a specific procedure for the election of officers. I therefore recommend the election of officers proceed in the following manner. I will call for nominations by the members for the office of President. When there are no further nominations, balloting will be made by a roll call vote. Each member will cast their vote by identifying a candidate by name. The candidate receiving the majority of votes will fill the office effective at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. If the office remains unfilled after the first ballot, as may happen if there are more than two candidates, balloting will proceed and will be repeated for that office as many times as necessary to obtain a majority of vote for a single candidate. After the office of President is filled in this manner, the same procedure will be followed for the nomination and election of Vice President. May I please have a motion to allow the nomination and election of officers to proceed in this manner?
I would so move.
A second.
The motion has been made by Mr. Deerking and seconded by Mr. Maxey. Is there any public comment? Hearing or seeing none? Let's proceed with the vote. Ms. Norton? This is to follow the procedure enunciated.
I understand. I kind of would like to know who's interested in seeing that we cannot discuss this.
I think we're just
Most
voting on the
ourselves.
procedures, then we'll go to the candidate.
Always voting on procedure. Oh,
Yeah.
sure, yes.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes.
Mr. Deerking?
Yes.
Ms. Amazola de Herrera?
Yes.
Ms. Basti Martinez?
Yes.
Ms. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza?
Yes?
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous. So now nominations are now in order for the office of President.
I would nominate Tammy Endozo for board president.
Ms. Mendoza has been nominated. Are there any further nominations for the office of President?
No, I'm saying, do you want to ask your question?
Well, I'm assuming that since Mr. Deerking nominated our current president and no one else has self-nominated themselves, that the only interest lies in the current president.
Are there no other nominations? Hearing and seeing none, we'll proceed to vote by roll call. I would ask the members identify the candidate, even though there's just one candidate when their name is called. The candidate they're casting their vote for. Ms. Turner?
Yes, for Ms. Mendoza.
Mr. Herrera?
Yes, for Ms. Mendoza.
Mr. Durkee?
Yes, Ms. Endozo.
Mr. Sellers?
Yes, Ms. Mendoza.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes, Ms. Mendoza.
Ms. Basti Martinez?
Yes, for Ms. Mendoza.
Ms. Norton?
Yes, for Ms. Endoza.
Mr. Maxey?
Yes, for Ms. Mendoza.
And Ms. Endoza?
Yes, for myself.
Ms. Mendoza has been elected to the office of president effective the next board meeting. Now we'll proceed with the nominations for vice president. Are there nominations for the office of vice president?
I would nominate Dr. Bernice Baste Martinez for the position of vice president.
Are there any further nominations for the office of vice president?
I would second it.
Any further nominations for the office of vice president? There being none, the nominations are closed. We'll call the roll. Ms. Norton,
Yes, for Ms. Baste Martinez.
Mr. Maxey,
Yes, for Ms. Vasquez Martinez.
Ms. Turner,
Yes, for Ms. Baste Martinez.
Ms. Emizola de Herrera,
Yes, for Ms. Baste Martinez.
Mr. Deerking,
Yes, for Dr. Baste Martinez.
Mr. Sellers,
Yes for Dr. Baste Martinez.
Mr. Carpenter, or Ms. Carpenter,
Yes, for Dr. Baste Martinez.
Ms. Mendoza,
Yes for Dr. Baste Martinez.
Dr. Baste Martinez.
Yes, for Bernice Baste Martinez.
She's been reelected to the office of vice president effective the next
And
board.
by the way, I assume you'll take the role.
So accept. Thank you.
So now we're on agenda item 15. If we could have Patrick Lee and Chris Castillo, we're going to get an update from the Department of Consumer Affairs, the Deputy Director of Board of Bureau Services, and the Assistant Deputy Director for Board of Bureau Services.
Jessica here real quickly. So thank you, President Mendoza, Vice President Baste Martinez, Executive Officer Yamaguchi. Thank you for the opportunity to come here today and provide an update from the department. I'm Chris Castrillo, the Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services at the Department of Consumer Affairs. I believe I can still say new. I'm 4 months in to my new role here. Very, very excited to be getting around to all of our boards, especially the opportunity to come down to BVMPT for the first time here today. Just by a little bit of background, I come to DCA with a background in legislative advocacy and campaign management, most recently working as a legislative advocate where I covered a variety of policy areas, including healthcare, youth mental health, foster care, higher education, local government, to name a few. I've also worked on candidate initiative campaigns in both California and Oregon. Very, very excited to start this new role here at the Department of Consumer Affairs, working with all of our boards. In addition, in a moment, I'll give Patrick the opportunity to come and introduce himself. Between Patrick, myself, and our other Assistant Deputy Director, Karen Nelson, we have a new structured office of Board and Bureau Services that's intended to be very responsive to all of our board's needs, present at our meetings, and making sure that whether it's your staff, your executive officers, board leadership, board members, that if you need answers, questions, or just general help finding your way through the department and navigating various divisions we're here to assist in that. So we're very, very excited to start this kind of new role here at the department. Before I turn it over to Patrick, just want to give you a couple of quick updates for some items that we have prepared for you today. Last month we held our first Directors Quarterly meeting of 2018. That included our board executive officers, board leadership. We had over 40 attendees, 35 of our programs represented. Those quarterly meetings are intended to provide an open dialogue between our boards, board leadership, our executive officers, with the department, and particularly the director. This particular meeting, we discussed a number of items that we're going to be undergoing with our strategic plan in 2018. With respect to the Office of Board and Bureau Services, we're very excited to be pulling together some licensing and enforcement work groups. For those who are familiar with our pro rata work group, we're going to be modeling it after that, taking a look at best practices across all of our boards, healing arts, non-healing arts, on licensing and enforcement, getting our subject matter experts in the room, and sharing knowledge across all of our boards on best practices with respect to licensing and enforcement. So we're very, very excited to get that going. Continuing on with sort of the open dialogue that we've been trying to have with our boards, we're also going to be having our executive officer brown bag. That's going to be February 28th. These are intended, again, to get all of our executive officers across all of our boards at DCA to share knowledge, network, get to know each other a little bit better. There's a lot of similarities across all of our boards. We all cover a wide variety of issue areas. And we find that getting our executive officers together, in addition to DCA's executive leadership team, is a good opportunity to learn and grow and provide, again, sort of best practices across our boards. With that note, just want to say hello and welcome to Elaine. We're very, very excited to have you on board as the new executive officer here at BVMPT. Myself being new with Patrick, who's going to come up here in a minute. With Elaine in your new role at BVMPT, we're very, very excited to be working with you all together here. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Patrick. Thank you.
Good morning, President Dozo, Vice President Bassett Martinez, Executive Officer Yamaguchi, members of the board. Thank you so much for having us this morning. Executive Officer Yamaguchi, welcome aboard. My name is Patrick Clay. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services. I work under Chris and alongside my counterpart, Karen Nelson. I want to say, as a point of personal privilege, I've been on the job for only 3 months, but have an opportunity to meet some of you and work a little bit with Ms. Yamaguchi. And I have to say, it's been such an honor and privilege to both have this opportunity to work with you and your staff, but also learn more about the incredibly important work that you do protecting California consumers. Since I'm new, also a little bit about myself. Prior to joining the department, I was the Assistant Chief of External Affairs at Covered California, the state's health benefit exchange, where I helped implement the Affordable Care Act since it opened its doors in 2013. I took a number of roles in those years, from operations, government relations, and stakeholder relations. And prior to that, I worked in the California State Assembly, where I staffed issues on the judiciary and veteran affairs. So again, very much looking forward to be working with you. For my first update, it will be regarding the Future Leadership Development Program. As you may be aware, the department launched the Future Leadership Development Program in May of last year. The goal of the program is to develop board and bureau staff through executive mentoring, customized leadership training, and project management. We're glad to report our first class is making tremendous progress. They are paired with a mentor. They're participating in special projects that could benefit the department, and they are meeting with executives who are sharing career advice. So, for example, the FLD class have recently met with Alexis Podesta, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency Secretary, as well as Mona Pasquille, Governor Brown Appointment Secretary, earlier this month. And we're glad to report that the class is set to graduate next month on March 7th. My next update is regarding the required board member trainings. Dates for the 2018 Board Member Orientation Training, or BMOT, have been confirmed. The first one of the year is scheduled for March 21st. The next 3 will be on June 6th, September 18th, and December 5th. As you know, board members are required to take this training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to a board. Registration is available online, and it is a 1-day training in Sacramento, which details the important functions and responsibilities of board members. If you need any assistance with the registration, feel free to contact the Solid team, or any members of the Board and Bureau Services team would be more than happy to facilitate that process. So with that concludes the update, short and sweet, and again, very much looking to be forward to be working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we also have guests from the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. If they can come up and introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Hoffman. I'm the Undersecretary with the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and I want to thank you all for the tremendous work you do, and I want to welcome Elaine to the board. I think it's going to be an amazing addition to this team. Thank you.
morning, everyone. Sonia Logman, Deputy Secretary at Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. For those of you that I already know, hello and good morning. And for those of you that I look forward to meeting, also hello and good morning. I've had the opportunity to serve the team at BCSH since 2015, and so I've gotten to know your board a little bit since then, and look forward to continuing to work with you in our capacity agency, supporting things like budget change proposals, all of your regulations as they make their way through, and the other oversight that we provide as your umbrella agency. Thanks.
Thank you. So that moves us to agenda item 16, the executive officer's report.
And I'd like to defer to Ms. Rochelle Lee to provide our administrative update and our staffing update.
Good morning. I am Rochelle Lee, the Staff Services Manager. We went over the Admin and Support Services section with the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psych Techs. And new staff vacancies. This quarter, the unit currently has 4 true vacancies, 2 office technician cashier positions, 1 office assistant in the mailroom, and then an office technician receptionist. The administration unit has made conditional offers to fill 3 vacancies in the cashiering and reception, which will be reflected in next board meeting report. Under our lease renewal, the board is currently working with DCA facilities on a lease renewal at our current location. We will take this opportunity to address any space needs, reconfigurations, new carpet, paint, etc. Under the committee updates, the following committees have met since the last board meeting: the Evaluations Committee on January 19th, the Executive Committee on January 19th and February the 5th, the Licensing Committee on January 19th, Education Committee on January 25th, the Enforcement Committee February 8th, the Legislative Committee February 8th, and the Administrative Committee on February the 9th. All committees will meet again in the next quarter prior to the next board meeting. The dates still need to be determined. Under our reception and front counter, to address the wait times and increase the amount of calls handled and resolved, the board is actively working with DCA Office of Human Resources on the recruitment for a supervisor for this unit. Additionally, a long-term goal is to create a call center for the board. Management continues to provide ideas, information, and training to front counter reception staff. Staff are now required to submit a daily phone stats to better identify where the problems may be occurring. We also have set a daily target of 50 calls per day, in addition to the other tasks associated with the reception front counter. The front counter reception staff will continue to work to develop their productivity, teamwork, and providing excellent customer service. Following our charts reflective of the number of phone calls received, average wait times, applicants or licensees assisted at the front counter, emails received through the BVMPT email box, and the issuance of temporary licenses. So for the phone calls received, the legend on the side, October, November, and December are highlighted and color-coded. And then under the reception and front counter staff on page 3 and 7, you can also see the numbers there for the total calls and then the calls offered. The number of licenses applicants assisted at the front counter for October was 406. For November was 343, and for December was 309. On page 4, to date, the board is responding to all BVMPT email inquiries within 2 to 3 business days. Emails received through the BVMPT email box are listed below: October 1,807, November 2,758, and in December 1,445. The next chart is the total number of temporary licenses issued, and the numbers are kind of transposed, but October was 26 licenses issued, November was 36 licenses, and December was 27 licenses issued. On page 5, under our cashiering unit, currently the cashiering unit is down to 1 permanent full-time office technician with 2 vacancies. 1 office technician cashier retired and the other office technician cashier promoted in the month of December. It remains necessary to use the employee who promoted on a half-time basis to assist with the workload and training at least until the end of February. Under vocational nurses, for processing times in-house, the average total is 641. Number of process payments in-house for renewals is 203. I'm just going over the average totals. Under the examinations, 234. Re-exams, 89. Interim permits, 3. Initial licensure, 58. And verifications, 53. Number of process payments online for renewals was 2,605. For examinations, 406. For re-examinations, 291. Interim permits, 8. Initial licensure, 460, with verifications at 68. For the psychiatric technician, processing times in-house, quarter average is 48. Number of process payments in-house, renewals, quarter average 22, examinations 5, re-examinations 17, initial license at 4. Number of process payments online for renewals, 266, quarter average, examinations 40, re-exams 9, initial licensure 30. Under mailroom, the board's mailroom receives a significantly large amount of mail. The board currently has 1 full-time permanent staff member dedicated to this function. On average, the board received 2,782 pieces of mail over the last quarter. Under vocational nursing initial licensure processing, the ILF, processing times in weeks, in-house is 2.5 weeks, online is 1.5 weeks. Initial licensing applications approved in weeks, total average is 582. Vocational nursing re-exam processing, re-exam application processing times in weeks, in-house is 3 weeks, online is 8 weeks. Number of re-examination applications approved in weeks, on the quarter average is 227. Then under agenda item 16B, the current BB and PT vacancies. We have under our admin section, assistant AEO position. Interviews were conducted and we're pending Corey clearance. Under the enforcement and complaints, we have an SSA, which is part of the intake stats position, and we're working on an MOJ and duty statement for that. We have an enforcement complaints SSA/HEPA. Interviews were held the week of 2/12/2018. Enforcement investigations. We are in the process of screening applications for the assistant one. In the education division, we still have a vacancy on the NEC and the supervising NEC, and we're working on advertising for both of those vacancies. Admin and support services. We have an OT limited term on hold pending reorg. We have an admin support services officer supervisor 3, which is also a limited term. Admin support, we have an OT. Top candidate was selected. Start date is 3/1. Admin support OA. Interviews were held the week of 2/12/18, and then we have a licensing PT. Interviews were held the week of 2/5/2018. Did you have any questions?
Michelle, do we have the time for the PTOs?
The time?
In weeks, how long it's been taking to get those processed? Because I saw the VNs, but we didn't have the PTs on there. Or did I miss it?
Because of this, yeah, that's in my evaluation meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Can you just help me understand on the phone calls received? Is it really 34,783 calls in the month of November? Or is that a typo? That seems
No,
like
it's
lot
not a
of
typo.
calls.
And so what we do is we get calls based on the county. A lot of people will hang up and call again, and then there's some people who can't get through. But based on the reader and the data, those are the numbers.
And that's only the calls that go to the front counter? Because like that's 1,500 calls a day.
It's a lot of calls.
But it's only to the front counter. That's not like all the phone calls that come into the board.
No.
Just the front counter.
Where there's only 3 receptionists there currently.
And of that, so of the 34,000 that came in, total calls offered are calls that are actually answered.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Just an observation, since we've gone to online servicing, it's very clear that that is working for us as well as for our constituents by the numbers.
Right.
So I would encourage everyone who hasn't thought about working online to consider it.
Right.
I have a question. Sure. Okay, so online, initial processing time, it looks like it's faster online.
It is.
Okay, but then re-exam process, same time online versus in-house? It's-
Tell me what page you're on.
Okay, I'm on page 7. So you have quarter average time for re-exam at 8 weeks versus in-house 3 weeks. Do you see the third paragraph down, or third section down?
Yeah, I do. And what I believe that is, Cheryl, is there's one person that does re-examinations. And so with that, there is a compilation of a report that she works line for line. So the ones coming through the mail, to my understanding, she gets to quicker as opposed to going through, working through the report. So the last report I saw that came was like 25 pages. Whereas if somebody sends it to the mail, she gets it right there. And so that's her own internal process in regards to how she's working through those numbers. But there is only one person.
So we need help there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I wanted to make one date correction. The Reg Committee met February 9th instead of the 8th.
Okay.
It's minor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 17, the executive committee report. Oh, sorry, 16C.
I couldn't let her skip that one. I am delighted to report that we have hired an assistant executive officer. Her name is Vicki Lyman. She is currently at the Department of Insurance. She will start March 1st.
Now we can move on.
Thank you.
Sorry. So we're on agenda item 17, which is the executive committee report. So we met in January and February. Board staff has put a recommendation to revisit the board structure or the committee structures and bring forward a proposal for the next board meeting. We have a sample in the papers that we were given for the board meeting today. This doesn't have to be the way that we condense or put some together, but some of the board committees are doing repetitive work. So that's one thing. So an example could be that we combine Strategic Outreach Committee with the Reg Committee so that it would do both, because you have to talk to the legislatures and the assembly, but you also have to communicate with the stakeholders to hopefully bring back legislation or propose legislation for bettering of the board. And that would help to make the committees a little more manageable for the board staff. And we're soliciting recommendation or feedback on possible proposals so that we can look at it and bring it back at the next board meeting. The fee audit update, so as you know, we've had a fee audit report done, and at the last board meeting, I believe we had asked Brian to review those and assist us. The board staff had reviewed it, and in exec committee brought forth to work with legislative staff to notify them that a proposed fee increase will be coming from us, and we're notified that it can be placed in an omnibus bill to author so that they could carry the changes. And the board staff is working on this fee proposal that should be ready by the end of March for review and approval by the board. That being said, it's likely that we will possibly need to hold a teleconference to move forward with getting the language to the legislature, and it would more than likely sometime be in April. Okay? Then the NCSBN, I think that for us as a board, it would be beneficial for us to become a little more active in the National Council of State Board. They have some meetings coming up. One is in regards to enforcement issues. So we're looking at becoming more involved with NCSBN. And then the last one is the sunset hearing. While boards undergo sunset every 4 years, the department undergoes a sunset review each year. This year, the department's hearing is on Monday, March 5th, 2018, and the legislature has requested the representation from BVMPT to attend the hearing. So that is our report.
Is there a scheduled time, Madam President, on the March 5th meeting?
At this time, I'm not quite sure. Elaine, do you know?
The hearing itself is scheduled to start at 10. My understanding, and we haven't really received a specific, request of exactly what they'd like to see BVMPT present. My understanding is as they are working with the DCA overall to discuss their sunset, that they would like to at least say hello and meet their new board president and their new executive officer, and probably give a very, very brief update on where we are in terms of meeting the monitor report recommendations as well as our progress on AB 1229. But my hunch is that we would be at the end of the hearing.
Any other questions by board members?
No, I just want to make a comment to reemphasize this regarding the committee structure, that during our last sunset hearing, the legislature highly encouraged this board to utilize and take advantage of the committee structure. So just going forward, let's keep in mind that we should maintain some of those committees to show that we are cooperating with our legislature.
Any further questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 18, the administrative committee report.
All right, well, that's me again this time. Samantha James Perez, who is the chair of that committee, is unable to be here today. The committee administrative committee met February 9, 2018. Rochelle Johnson staffed that meeting. There were changes regarding the staffing. So she supplied the information to us that we required from staff updates. Ken Swenson, our attorney, was present. Samantha James Perez was present by telephone. And then our UEO, Elaine Yamaguchi, was in attendance on a certain item, as well as Brian Clifford. The purpose of the administrative committee was, again, to do outreach to some of the staff, again, in response to the legislature's request that there be some more interaction between board members and some of the staffing. Although it was highly unusual based upon our history, it was felt that that was important. So what we discussed, we received an update on staff counseling, which was an issue. So some of the staff underwent counseling. And we found out that no longer would they need any future counseling, at least not at this point in time. They underwent staff training. Now, we had highly encouraged staff to participate in additional training outside of our board, such as solid training. And we had last year 65 staff members from BV and TP go through training, and 3 board members participated in training. Also, an enforcement academy training was conducted by attorney Ken Swenson, which seemed to be highly popular. Out of the 47 seats, 6 were filled by BV and TP staff members, which was about 21%. So we were glad that our staff members participated in that as well. We are working on a staff survey to find out how the staff feels about their work environments, conditions, and if they have any suggestions and ideas going forward. There was a discussion about the administrative committee, what's its function, what's its purpose, since we have a new executive administration involved. So we updated them from our perspective on what we thought was important about the reason for the existence of the administrative committee. Some of the other things that the administrative committee had reported on that they had conducted staff interviews. I already talked about staff training. We encouraged increased social activities among staffers, and I mentioned the counseling for the staff members. Now, on March 5th, as was mentioned, there will be a hearing with the legislature, and if our issue of the administrative committee is brought up, that will be addressed as to whether or not going forward the administrative committee will be expected to continue to exist or not, since, especially in light of the fact we have a new EO here. And so that concluded our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to, any board members have questions or comments for the administrative committee? Seeing none, that brings us to public comment. Oh, Paula, sorry.
Yeah, I guess I might have a question. Did I hear correct that the administrative committee may be dissolved? And is that something that you recommend, given that you've been working on it? Or?
No, I personally do not recommend it. I think that the staff, they are very pleased to have some sort of connection or interaction with the board members. Now, that may be slightly highly unusual because it's normally the executive officer administration that, you know, it's their responsibility to deal with the day-to-day issues of working with staff. We acknowledge that. But in light of the problems that we had with the sunset hearing and how the legislature encouraged us to form this committee, and as a matter of fact, when we delayed forming it, we were, I don't want to say reprimanded, but we were reminded that it was, you know, something that was highly encouraged. We felt that we should maintain it, and I still believe that we should maintain it. As we make our quarterly reports to the legislature, I think that it would be great for this administrative committee to submit a report on what they have done to improve the work environment and conditions and staff satisfaction in that report, and so that I am encouraging us to maintain the administrative committee.
Thank you so much.
Any other comment from board board members? Seeing none, now we'll move on to the Education Division report regarding VN and PT programs, agenda item 19. So agenda item 19A, reconsideration of provisional approval and/or consideration to request to admit students. So we're going to go with agenda item 19A1, CNI College Vocational Nursing Program for reconsideration of provisional approval and request to admit students. Beth DeYoung is the NEC. Thank you. We've received the report and read it. Do board members have any questions for the NEC?
Not at this moment.
Seeing none, is there a representative from CNI College Vocational Nursing Program present? If we could have you state your name and your professional title and let us know whether or not you agree with the NEC's recommendation.
Good morning, member of the board, and good morning to my NAC, Ms. Beth Young. My name is Dr. Sasha Wang, and I'm the program director of the CNI College Vocational Nursing Program. And I'm agreeing with the recommendation from our NAC.
Do any board members have questions for the school? Do they have any further questions or questions for the NEC? Any public comment? Can I have a motion?
I would move to accept the report regarding CNI College as submitted by the NEC.
Second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to accept. That's what he said. Accept the report from the NECs with the recommendations. So we have a motion and a second. The motion made by John Durkin was to move to accept the report and the recommendations from the NEC, and it was seconded by Ken. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, any board comment? No more discussion by the board. We'll do a roll call vote. Donna? Yes. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
So the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That will bring us to 19A2, Galvin College Vocational Nursing Program, reconsideration for provisional approval and request to admit students. Jessica Gomez, the NEC, thank you. We've received the report and read it. Do any board members have any questions regarding the report for Jessica Gomez? Seeing none, we have a representative from the school here. If we could have you state your name and professional title and let us know whether or not you agree or disagree with NEC's recommendations.
My name is Susan Turner, and I'm the interim director of the LVN program at Galvin College. I'm an RN, and I am in agreement with the board report.
Thank you. Do board members have any question for the school?
I have a comment. This has been a long journey for the institution, and having watched that journey from the perspective of the Education Committee, I commend you and your institution for the hard work that you did, particularly in the last 3 months.
We really have worked hard. It was a tall order, and putting that instructional plan together. Jessica Gomez was a big help for us, big help. We wouldn't have made it without her. She was available for consultation. We had a lot of questions. She really helped us And I don't think we would have made it without somebody that really worked with us. So that's great, thanks.
Thank you. Our NECs do a wonderful job.
I just keep bringing her more.
Thank you. Any further discussion by board? Can I have a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report regarding Gavilan College and implement the recommendations.
Cheryl Turner seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Motion made by John to accept the report and the recommendations from the NEC and implement them. Is there any further discussion needed by the board? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to 19A3 Palo Verde Community College Blythe Vocational Nursing Program for reconsideration of provisional approval. Beth DeYoung, Nursing Education Consultant. Thank you. We've received the report and read it. Do any board members have any questions for the consultant? Seeing none, we have representatives from the school up here. If we can have you state your name and title and let us know whether or not you agree or disagree with the NEC's recommendations.
Good morning. I am Dr. Teresa Seaside. I'm the Interim Director and Associate Dean of Nursing and Allied Health at Blythe, and I have no rejections or comments as far as what Beth put in the report and has asked for.
Good morning, Dr. Sean Hancock. I'm the Vice President of Instruction and Student Services, and I agree with the report.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions for the school representatives or the NEC? Seeing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
And Ken, is that to accept the NEC's recommendation and report and to implement them?
Yes.
Thank you. And John?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept the NEC's report and implement the recommendations as written. We'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Any public comment? Now we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're moving on to agenda item 19B, consideration of request to admit students by programs on provisional approval. We're going to start with 19B1, Advanced Medical School of Nursing, Pittsburgh, the Vocational Nursing Program. Request to admit students. Jessica Gomez is the NEC. Thank you, Jessica, for your report. We've read it and received it. Do any board members have any questions for the nursing education consultant?
I do.
Donna?
So I want to make sure I read this correctly. There are a couple of things. Do they have clinical sites?
They have clinical sites that are available for them, yes.
I'm sorry, that are what?
That are available for them,
Okay.
yes.
And according to your recommendation, we're recommending that they have no students until the previous students have taken the exam. Is that correct?
Yes. The reason is because the students that they had were put at such a disadvantage with having missed so many clinical hours, so many theory hours, not having the proper equipment and needs to take care of the program. And so until we see if the policies and the procedures and the actions that they put in place help these students, I would not recommend putting any students in the school.
Thank you.
Question.
Cheryl?
All right, so this looks familiar to me. I think we've looked at it before. Was it another class we approved or no?
No, we have not approved
Ever
it.
for this?
They had the one initial class is all they've had.
Okay, so that was approved now.
And they graduated in September, and at this time, none of them have taken the licensure exam.
Bernice, thank you. If you refresh all of our memories, this was one where there was the site visit?
There was 2 site visits.
You want to refresh everyone's memory?
This is the facility where there was a lot of issues, both with the campus itself and with the program. The students were not getting the number of theory and clinical hours that were required. Their attendance was not being made to be made up. Some of the students had missed as many as 240 hours. This is the facility that had the computer lab was set up with screens, but they didn't have any computers other than the monitors. Their library, when we went through, was empty. And so there was a lot of issues the first time. When we went back the second time, the majority of this was corrected. They did have a library that was supplied, they had received supplies for their skills lab. The first time there wasn't enough adequate supplies for their skills lab. Students did make up their clinical time. They did make up their theory time. The concern is just that, was it too late for the students? Because when we finally got everything made up, it was in July and they graduated in September.
Question. Is there a time period during which these students must take the test in order to evaluate their pass rate?
They just need to test. We haven't had any of them test at all yet. So hopefully by the next board meeting, they'll have some students test.
So there's no time period?
There is no time limit that these students can test.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions or discussion? So we have representatives from the school. If you could state your name and title and then tell us if you agree or disagree with the NEC's recommendations.
My name is Melissa Go, and I'm the Director of Nursing. I was brought in to do the corrections and work with the school. With Jessica, we made those corrections. We were hoping to have board pass rates by December or January if we could, and so that's why we requested for students to be admitted in March. We have kept in contact with the students, encouraging them, and we have always encouraged them to take their boards as soon as possible. I spoke with Jessica last week, and with the duration going on, that some of them still haven't tested. A lot of them have applied. We have gone ahead and starting review classes for them free of charge at our campus twice a month on Saturdays, and one-to-one reviews as needed and requested by the students. So I would concur with Jessica based on her findings. And I do have a correction. There were 14 students that were graduated, not 13. I did submit that to Jessica, but I think it was too late for your meeting, so.
Any questions from the board for the school?
So, you're agreeing with Jessica's recommendation to admit no students?
Myself as the Director of Nursing, working with Jessica, I do agree with that recommendation. I do believe Dr. Ike has some comments. He is the owner of the school.
Ike Maneko. I know it's not often that an administrator will disagree with the DON. This is kind of an unusual situation. I've spoken to Mrs. Gomez a lot of times and we discuss the issues. Our recommendation, unfortunately, I do not agree with that. She did point out, rightfully so, that we corrected the issues, except for two that we cannot correct that the students have admitted. So we, like she said, we've been working with the students. Our observations are correct. I agree with those. We did make the corrections. The second time they came around, we got on board, got everything corrected. So we are requesting of the board to give us the chance to admit the students so we can prove what we have done, that what we've done will work, that we've taken the necessary steps to not only to make the correction, to make sure that they carried over to the upcoming students. So not giving us the chance to admit, to just sit and wait for the students to test them, that's going to not only not give us the chance to prove to the board what we can do, but it basically is not giving the school a chance at all to show what it can do to the community that we serve. So we're requesting of the board to give us the chance to admit the students, to show you, the board, what we can do. That we do have the necessary equipment, the necessary staff in place, and what we need to successfully turn out qualified students. Thank you.
Board member comments for
Yes.
Cheryl? Okay, can you clarify again, is it because the students are not ready to test, or you just found that the environment is not up to our criteria? Remind me again.
The environment and the learning situation for the students was absolutely not adequate. Where I need to feel before I can recommend that these students, what was put in place worked. Until we see a pass rate, we don't know if it worked or not. The students were really put at a disadvantage. This is the school that didn't have, the bathroom door didn't work. This is a school that there was just so many issues. They were getting classes on Saturdays for 12 hours where they should have been getting 16 hours of education in the theory. And they just weren't getting the clinical experiences that they needed to have. If an instructor was not available, then they just didn't hold class. And so I really feel like we need to see how these students were affected with the improvements that they did. Yes, they did make some of the improvements. They can't do the two until they do admit, and that was they were not giving credit to the students who were CNAs. We're not giving them any credit at all, and they were not following their admission policies. And so they can't fix those until they admit a program. But the students that they had were set at such a disadvantage that I would just really want to know that what they put in place worked.
And when's the next time they can have a class? Just
After they get a pass rate is when I would feel comfortable recommending. So it depends on when their students do take a licensure.
So this is your initial class, right? You only had one class.
That is correct.
So can you, if I heard Jessica correctly, you didn't have the correct number of hours in your curriculum.
Say that again?
You didn't have the correct number of hours in your curriculum, Jessica?
They had the correct number of hours, they just weren't holding them. They for the convenience of the school or whatever was happening, they were not holding class.
Okay. And you had monitors hooked up with just a monitor.
Yeah.
So can you explain how you intended to educate students with that kind of a atmosphere, and why? I guess I really want to know why you set it up that way, and why we're supposed to trust that you have the students' best interests at heart.
Actually, we do have students' best interest at heart. When she made the initial visit, we had computers. Not all of them were hooked up. Okay, and Ms. Gomez can vouch for that. We do have the computers. Not all of them were hooked up at that time that she came. We have a huge computer room with probably about 16 computers there right now, a little more. But when she made it now, by the second visit, they were all hooked up and working. The first visit, not all of them were hooked up, but we did have computers. Yes.
So were they in a closet, or why weren't they offering the students to use them?
Well, we had two issues actually that going on at that time. So not all of them, remember I said not all of them. The students have computers to use if they wanted to. For those of them who want, we just didn't have all of them hooked up. And if I recall correctly, as I told her when I came, we were also doing some remodeling that time. We are planning on painting that area. That's one of the reasons too, what I told her that time. So it's not just that we don't have computers. We do have computers. We have the equipment. As a matter of fact, if you see our computer lab, visit our other schools, our computer lab is way better than most other schools that I've seen.
Okay. So you've been offering one-to-ones and remedials with the students, and why are your students saying that they're not testing?
I'm sorry?
Why are the students, if you're offering remedials and one-to-ones with the students, so why are they not testing? What's the feedback your students are giving to you?
Well, most of the feedback, the students were not feedback. The students have not made the obligations with the school. That's most of the major issues. The students not meeting the obligations with the school to allow them to test.
So the students aren't testing because why?
Some of them financial obligations with the school.
So sounds like you're in a real like circle here, because you're not allowing your students to test because they haven't paid, and we're not allowing you to have students until students test.
That is basically correct.
I have no further questions.
Paula?
What? I would say not all of them, though, not all of them, because some, not all of them.
There have been several students that have paid what they need to pay for the tuition, and we've already sent this information to the board, and they're waiting to take their exams.
Thank you for clarifying that.
My first question is, when the tour happened, how far in the semester or the quarter was the time frame?
I believe they were on week 15 of 51. I was not the director at that time. We went ahead and went through extensively with Jessica what they had been given in the class and remediated, made up those hours in those classes and tested them out.
And was there a reason why the remodel happened 15 weeks into the semester?
I am not privy to that information. I just said it was at the time. I'll let Dr. Ike answer that because I was not the director of nursing there at that time.
And there's no particular reason. It's just when we chose to do that, when we chose to do the project, because we were doing other areas of planning, doing other areas of the school at that time as well.
In retrospect, it seems like that put you in a very problematic place to choose that time, because if the students are supposed to be in class and you're painting the room, then they can't be in class, or they can't be utilizing the computers.
Okay, it is corrected because it has nothing to do with the student being in class. It's just the computer room, a section of the computer room. And remember, not all the computers, just some of them.
So they had laptops somewhere else, or?
So they have laptops.
Because you said some of them were available. Where were those available?
The same lab.
In the same
lab, yeah.
Okay. So, because we have an image
the
here.
The front section, we do. Like, we have many computers, we have, I don't believe we have up to 16 computers when she came, I don't remember at that point in time. But we have enough computers that students who wanted to could use it.
And how many of the testing classes have been offered so far? Or like the weekend classes or review classes?
So we did testing out at the end of school for every term, and we sent those scores to Jessica, and they have passed satisfactorily. Actually, with some pretty higher scores, 80s, a few 70s, in the high 70s and higher. And then I talked to Jessica, I think it was last week, and we were both concerned that they still haven't tested. And so at that point, we have made the decision the week before. The first class was the 17th. We will continue every other Saturday. If that's not a good day for the students, we can do one-to-one or find a more convenient time.
So in your experience working with the first class, would you, is there anything that we can tell Ms. Gomez to alleviate her concern that they're not prepared to pass this test, or there isn't?
Well, I can't make any guarantees. I have had similar situations at larger nursing schools for LPN programs in California, but not this many violations. I did feel comfortable at having them test twice for their final predictive testing, and we remediated all the questions that they missed. I would like to also see some board pass rates, at least the first quarter, and so we can see where we're at, and I would concur with Jessica.
And I would just, in line with the question I just asked her, I would like to let Ms. Gomez know as well. You're right about the computer situation, definitely, but we did correct it. That's what I wanted to point out. Those issues we are corrected, so it's no longer an issue at this point. So when she first came, 100% right, they've been corrected, so it will not negatively impact the students in any way at all. Thank you.
So I guess we know that we need more nurses, and we know that we need the schools to train them properly. And as board members, we want to make a decision that where those students who invested their monies into getting an education, that they are getting an education that will lead to a license so that they can practice. Is there anything aside from what's on the report that we can consider so that when we're making our vote that we know if this is the right vote or not? Because I'm on the one hand, I know that there is a need for more nurses, so I want to allow more students to join your school. And on the other hand, I want to make sure that the student investment is the right one, and that your school will take the responsibility to train them so that it leads to their license. And I don't see clear one way or another. Is there anything you can tell me?
Yes, there is. Number one, instructors. We do have an awesome man instructor that is there, ready for the students, waiting with wealth of experience. Of course, in addition to Melissa, she's been in the industry for a long time. She just knows about anything there is to know about training students. So we have her, we have lots of good instructors that are waiting. Ms. Gomez met them already. So we have not only the instructors, we have the equipment, we have the facilities in place to train the students. So whatever the students need, we have to provide them the education that they need. So I can guarantee the board that given a chance, we have what the students need, what we need to turn out very, very successful educated students.
And is there any compromise from the school to see if they could come to an agreement with the financial obligation so that they can test, so you have more student testing?
Actually, I have done that already. That's what I've started working out deals with students, what I can work out with them to meet me halfway so that they can test. Yes, I've started doing that already.
Thank you so much for all the information. I really appreciate it. Getting more information so I can make educated guesses.
Any other board members have questions for the school?
I have a question of staff.
Okay.
Ms. Gomez, you've heard the statements made by the program representatives. Does that change your opinion regarding your recommendation?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
So,
I would move that we accept the NEC's report.
I would second.
so it's been moved and seconded. It's been moved by Donna to accept the NEC's report and seconded by John. Is there any further discussion needed by board members? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl? Yes. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Jessica for, she is continually helping with the program, and we are keeping in constant communication throughout the year, so I appreciate her input and help. Thank you, board.
So I guess we can ask to have a 5-minute break. So we're going to resume in 5 minutes, so it's 10:31. We're going to go ahead and get started.
I just crashed. So, yeah, I had the same experience. I went late last night.
Right here. Okay. Okay, we got council in here. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're on agenda item 19B2, Angeles Institute Artesia Vocational Nursing Program, request to admit students. NEC, Beth DeYoung, thank you. We've received the report and we've read it. Do any of the board members have any questions for the NEC? Seeing none, do we have a representative from the Angeles Institute of Vocational Nursing Program? If we could have you state your name and your title and let us know if you agree with the NEC's recommendation.
I'm Brandy Coward, Director of Nursing, and we disagree. With me is the Executive Administration, David Bice, Kelvin Solomon, Scott Coward. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us today and having us here. Thank you, Beth, as well, and giving us the opportunity to speak. I'm here to attempt to protect the education experiences of our students in our school. We used to have 4 starts of year and 45 students, and we've always had adequate faculty and sites and resources, but denying a start will now put strain on those areas.
Can we
Ms.
have you-
DeYoung?
Excuse me, can we have you speak?
Oh, sure.
internally? Thank you.
Ms. DeYoung has portrayed what our pass rates have been, but we are excited at this quarter. We've met the state. We've met the state quarter. We have been diligent in our attempts to continue to move forward. We have an active student affairs department, an ADON and a clinical supervisor who is there for student tutoring, an NCLEX student success coordinator. ATI was provided for our students. We improved our student ratios in our facilities and with our faculty. We scheduled NCLEX review sessions. We have campus-wide engagement for our students to be successful. And we invested in our instructors to make sure they have up-to-date nursing education and for student engagement. We haven't gotten starts. And as more students come through that are past graduates, that's going to continue to cause a problem. Upcoming in the second quarter and third quarter, we won't have any new graduates, and there will be just the old graduates. I cannot defend the past, but I ask for you to look at us today. And we're trying to protect our existing students and our school. We can't provide that education for them. Respectfully, I ask for a start of 30 students in April. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Weiss. I'm new to this organization, new to the executive team and the ownership structure. My background is I've been a successful school operator for the last 20 years, very focused on student outcomes, not in nursing, but in technology where there are third-party certifications. My role here is the institutional effectiveness. I've got some great nurses behind me. The focus has got to be more on measuring outcomes, and they did start doing that. My background also, I've got 7 years with the accreditation asset as a commissioner, and I'm still serving as a commissioner on a pro tem basis. Currently, I'm an institutional representative on the BPE Advisory Board appointed by the DCA Director. I'm also the chair of the National Association of Career Education Colleges and Universities. I provide this information only to demonstrate that I have the background to recognize a student outcome-focused institution. It starts with admissions, student services, curriculum, faculty, placement, and alumni services. I'm not here to defend the institution AI was a year ago, but I'm here to defend the school as it is today. As we just heard, last quarter, they did meet the benchmark at 69%, which was the quarterly benchmark. It will take more time to get to the annual rate. But as an accreditation commissioner, I regularly voted to pause or limit enrollments in institutions. But we also needed to recognize the importance of student flow in order to allow positive change to mature and to keep staff and faculty engaged with students. I also ask that you grant AI an April start of 30 students. Thank you.
To the Madam President, Vice President, Executive Officer, and to all the board members, good morning. My name is Kelvin Solomon, VP and owner of Angelus Institute. I want to first ditto what they just said. We're striving to bring in talent, such as Mr. Weiss, to increase and make better our school that was already, I think, a good school. In the past year, federal audits, 0 findings. We're strong in the community. We have clinical sites hiring our students when they graduate. We have people calling us up that we network, wanting our students. We have a strong program. There's no excuses for the past. We can only go forward. And one of the things to go forward, we need students to prove that we can do what we know we can do. And we know that you can see that in our heartfelt comments today. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to us today.
Board members have any questions for the school?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, please.
Donna?
I don't know if it's really so much a question as it is, I can tell that you believe this, that you believe, and I take to heart that you mentioned that you're an asset to the community as well. The problem that I have is that it appears that you have never made the annual pass rate since since 2015. And I've heard a couple of people say that it's not the same school that it was a year ago, and that you put all these things in place. But our obligation is to the students and to the public. How do your current students feel? Do your current students notice that you're not getting any new students?
Well, we've implemented, when we work with Beth, in this last start that we had, they're excited because we have items in place that we have for them, and we've specifically told them. So they're excited of our progress and what we're doing. So it's not dismay. It's more like, wow, we're moving forward. They're excited to be there at the school.
So you have 30 students now?
Yes.
Okay. And these are the 30 that are excited?
Yes.
And when are they going to graduate?
Not till summertime, August.
I have no further questions.
Thank you.
John?
My question is, what specific interventions have you undertaken to increase the pass rate?
Well, one of the big things, and I've heard from other directors as well, and from Ms. Dion, is instituting the ATI program, which we did. The good thing about it, our faculty and staff were on board. The students were a little bit more resistant to change, but once they saw the benefit of the program, that was one of the big things that we did. Also, yes, sir.
When did you implement that program?
That was started with our October start.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Exactly, and we do have, for existing students and past students, we do also offer for them to come at our expense to do review and whatever we can do to have them be successful.
Well, you weren't doing that before?
We offered it, but we're offering more of the standardized ATI live instead of something else for them. We're offering a more structured program for them.
Thank you.
Paula?
Hi, thank you so much. Looking at your pass rates, I see that the July through September 2016, your pass rate was 74 and the state average was 75. Can you tell us, like, what were the successes of that class and how you are replicating that currently so that we can understand where you're at?
I think working with the individual student was one of the positive aspects of that when we were really engaging our student affairs, our ADON, our clinical supervisor. What we would do is assign, this is your student. We work together to see what we can do to make you successful. So that's one of the things we do. It's like a mentor. They would have a mentor to help guide them.
And is that in place now?
Yes.
Was it in place between then and now?
We had some movement of staff, but yes, we have it in place and active at this time.
So between September 2016, between September 2016 and December 2017, there's been some gaps in that individual mentoring.
In the past. Currently, this is what we have, and we're focusing on these students.
So the class October through December 2017 received that mentoring one-on-one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there anything that we should consider when evaluating your program beyond what's reported here?
Sorry, I'm interrupting. My name's Scott Coward. I'm the campus director at Angeles Institute. You ask if there's anything currently that's in place that may not have been in place. The biggest thing that we see right now is a complete change in our student, not only from their attitude, but their performance. They're more focused, they're more dedicated, they like the things the school is doing, they understand more of why these changes needed to be made, and they're accepting of them. Because of that, we're finding out that their testing is going much better. Their knowledge base is much better than in the past. And that's part of the problem that we had, I would say, in the past, is students were not fully on board with us, and it made it difficult sometimes to get them to be at a level where they were the best they could be. What we're seeing now is students striving much better and being much more engaged. And it's something that we've always strived for, and when we first started, we had this, and we may have lost sight of that for a period of time, and our pass rates may show that for that. But with the classes, we've always tried to give them the best that we can. And like I said, with this class, we know that they're going to be successful. It's just a matter of timing. And in order to keep them focused and give them the best opportunity, we need to have continued start to be able to allow those students to succeed. We hate to see those things not happen. Thank you.
And just an additional comment. We're more engaged as an executive team. We're walking the halls, we're talking to students, we're engaging the students to make sure, hey, what are you getting? Can we improve? What do you like? What do you dislike? Every day we're walking those halls, engaging the students. They know us by our name, our first name. You know, I'm not Mr. Solomon, I'm Kelvin. Okay? I know the students' names, I talk to them. So we're more engaged, trying to get them to feel like, hey, this is not just a school, it's a family. You know, we're here, we're interested in their education, we're interested that they're successful. We want to make sure they're successful. And so we're engaging them more by interacting with them more.
I have a question. Bernice? Thank you. We heard some anecdotal information about changes in students and their attitude and their relationships. A little earlier, you have a new colleague that talks about evidence-based and being able to demonstrate or measure. What have you put in place that might, for the future, measure some of what was reported as anecdotal information about changes in students?
Well, we do student evaluations quarterly. And we take a look at what they found was successful and not successful, and recommendations from the students, from the school, the faculty, the curriculum, and we take a look at that at every quarter. Our Student Affairs Department also interacts with each and every student and asks them, what do you need to be successful? Those are items that we have and are in place to follow up on student outcomes. We do. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Zalman.
All right. I also interact with student affairs, and I do surveys. You know, I don't only ask the students, because sometimes when you ask them, they're not going to tell you, you know, especially for the owner of the school, they're not going to tell you maybe their true feelings. So I do surveys, and, you know, they're anonymous. Just write down what you feel, what you want, what you like, what you don't like. Then I can take that, and that can help us improve the school based on actual comments from the students. And that's just not the new cohort that just started. That's the old ones that are there right now. What are you happy about? What do you dislike? What do you don't like? What do you would, if you had to do this all over again, what you would want us to do better than we did, you know, or what do you want us to drop? And so when you get those anonymous surveys, they're pretty blunt, pretty honest. And so you can look at that and take that and use that to make it a better place and make it a better school. And that's what we're doing.
Can you give me an example of one of the responses that was implemented as a result of those surveys, like in the last quarter?
One of the things that I can immediately bring up is, at the time, we were only using print-based products. They asked if they could have ebooks and other type of online products. We did make that change.
Thank you.
You know, it's really hard to look at this case and say that this is something that we should be in favor of in your case, because looking at the numbers is inconsistent. And, you know, we're here as a board to ensure that these numbers are to improve. And looking at these numbers, it's actually the opposite. And so it's going to be hard for me to see it your way today. And so I just want you to know that. But can you give me kind of an example of why there is so much inconsistency and elaborate a little bit on what you have in place for these students to become leaders?
What we've put in place, and one of the examples was changing over from print to online, and actually we have both resources. We gave them opportunities to be able to work on those items, not only in class, but off campus, which was a big change for us. We also had to make sure that our faculty was on board for all these changes that we had, including ATI. Everyone had to get trained, and we made sure everybody was trained and fully confident in what that. So we've moved forward from that. We tried to find an item that would be helpful to us. We also talked to Ms. DeYoung. What are some items that we can do, which is why we took a look at our curriculum and how can we help the student. With this starting in October, the curriculum was enhanced and extra hours were added. So that's with our help with our NEC. Those are some of the items that we've done to try to continue this momentum that we currently have.
And then my follow-up question is, what would be a time frame in which you think could work for you and the school to improve these numbers and get them to where they should be?
As you know, it will continue, and you mentioned with another school as well, that it's the longer road. As we continue to have smaller starts or lack of starts, we will continue to have past grads that will come into that quarter and decrease the value that we would have had. So I'm anticipating that each quarter, if we can continue this momentum, it'll start to chip away at the number that we have and continue to increase. It won't be the leaps and bounds that we would like to have, but our class itself, the standing of the class, will show that positive result. The quarter won't, because I'll show other individuals from past cohorts that'll be in there, but at least I can show you from the class that these guys were successful and it was a positive result.
Yes. All right. So one of the recommendations is to place the program on our next agenda. It looks like to see whether or not you've improved or not. Ms. DeYoung, is that? Or to see whether, would you explain what you would like to do May 2019? Am I looking at the correct one?
Are you referring to recommendation number 3?
Yes.
Okay, that is just a continuation to place the program on May 2019, because that is when the provisional approval would be expired.
All right, so that's just
Reconsideration.
provisional approval that has nothing to do with the acceptance of a class.
That's correct.
All right. So can you provide any more elaboration? It's just basically a numbers decision that they are below the pass rate, and they need to demonstrate that they can meet the annual pass
Okay,
rate.
which is a concern because it does take time for an annual result to increase for a program. However, when I look at the program, it's been 3 years, that the pass rates have not been in compliance. And since October 2016, the school has been diligently trying to implement, improvements with the program that appear to be ineffective. So my concern is for the students, obviously, with the continuation of noncompliance of pass rates. So with the cohort in October that is now under the revised or board-approved curriculum, the curriculum was revised to include professional roles and NCLEX prep for approximately 80 hours. So that is an improvement, but I'm not necessarily sure that, it will improve, how it will improve the pass rate immensely, or, that's for us to determine. So I am concerned of the longevity of waiting, because if they graduate in August, the pass rates would be approximately 3 months after that to really be able to gauge the October class. Now, the cohort that just graduated in January of 2018, there'll be scores with that cohort coming through. Now, yes, they won't have the revised curriculum. However, all the other interventions that have been, added by the program this year alone, they should show results as well. So when we're looking at October, we're only really looking at what they have mentioned, not all of the others. So eventually, this cohort's important too that graduated in January to see all the other interventions as well. So I'm not really just focusing on the October class. However, it's important. Each cohort has had interventions applied for improvements, and we're just not seeing that. And there's a current investigation, or student complaint investigation currently on the January graduating class. Multiple students have complained, it's still under investigation, of miscommunication. Another allegation is that not one member of that cohort had graduated in January of 2018, which was their scheduled graduation date, and they did not know when they would be able to graduate. So that's still under investigation, the allegation that is currently ongoing.
So I know at least one of or two of our committees are very concerned about the pass rates. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've been able to review some of our board meetings, but we are working to move forward to a requirement of a 75% pass rate across the board. So that's very important to us, and I'm sure that'll be reflected in today's decision, but it looks like you'll be able to come back no matter what happens and continue to work with us. Okay? All right, thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to address real quick about, you want to know about pass rates and numbers. The last quarter, yes, we were at 69%. But the state average was also at 69%, which is the first time we've made that equal footing with the state. Now, yes, it's not 75%. And yes, it doesn't bring our average annual up. But that's a 14% increase from the last quarter to this quarter. So it shows that the things that we've put in place worked. Even though they weren't mandated, what response we got from the students that were there, that we were able to get back, came in and were successful. So I would like you to please take that into consideration when you make your decision about giving us a start this time, because we would like to keep that momentum moving forward, and the only way to do that is to have students. Even if we're asking for a start of 30, even if you were to give us a start of 25 or 20, at least that is giving us students that can continue the momentum forward while we're still trying to find and deal with the past students that may not have taken the exams yet. Because as you know, outlying students, if they take longer than 4 months, their success rate is very low, even if they were good students. Someone who waits to take the exam usually fails the exam. And since we don't know the names of those students, we are trying through our new student affairs department and through our more involvement to find out truthfully from those students whether they took this exam, whether they did not take the exam, how we can help them. And we know that, like I said, this has worked because of our increase. Okay, now I know it's recent, but it is working. Thank you.
Ms. DeYoung, would you consider a smaller class at all, or you just feel that it's not ready?
Back in May of 2017, when this program was first put on provisional approval, the July class was denied. However, after that, there was never a denial of a class. There was a denial of the request in August for 45 students. That was decreased to 30 at that time. That was due because of the revised curriculum. But at this time, with the last cohort in the quarter or the annual pass rate, I would not recommend a class at this time.
Any further questions from board members to either the school or the NC? Bernice?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I heard the NEC correctly. Would you confirm there's student investigations going on? Did I hear that correctly?
You heard that correctly.
May I address that?
Thank you.
With Ms. DeYoung as well as with the members here. As I was indicating, I'm trying to make sure that all graduates get the added benefit of ATI. That's all I was offering to those students. Those applications were sent. I was just trying to make sure that they received the ATI content and they were resistant. However, those applications were sent, and I anticipate for those grads that were in January are going to be in sometime beginning of March, mid-March, depending when those eligibility letters come back.
Any further questions or comments from the board to the school or the NEC? Can we have a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report and recommendation as submitted.
Second, Alita.
So we have a motion on the floor made by John to accept the NEC's report and recommendations. It's seconded by Alita. Do board members need further discussion on this? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
I have one question.
Donna?
This is a really tough one. Can you explain to me why, because you seem to have made a lot of emphasis on that your current students can't succeed if you don't have future students. Can you speak to that?
Current students?
Well, you said that you would hate to see your current students not have the ability to have, to not
That just
succeed. And
applies
it
stress
felt like
on-
you were.
It applies stress on the school itself. When you're not, we're solely nursing. We don't have 15 other programs. Our emphasis is on nursing, vocational nursing and CNA. That's it. So to not have resources of new students to come in, that applies stress.
Okay, but you have the staff and the facilities.
Of course, yes.
To continue with your
Yes.
current students.
That's correct.
And your obligation to them.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
If you don't mind indulging me one last time. When faculty is looking at this and seeing what's going on, it's hard to maintain good faculty as your school shrinks. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, the test rate, the only consistent thing with those test results is that they were poor. The one time that was, in the 70s, I don't know if it was anything that was actually done at AI that made that happen, but I can tell you the things that have been put in place now, this next quarter will be successful. But when you have to wait another 3 months, faculty starts looking around and deciding they need to go somewhere else. It just gets harder and harder. I know there's some talk of risk of losing clinical sites. You used to be able to provide a certain amount, and you can no longer do that. You don't know me, and I would put my professional and personal reputation at risk to say that we're going to hit where we need to hit. These students, they talked a little bit about, just their attitude and everything else. They've always, our students, the student populations that we serve, they always had it in themselves to be successful. They just had to believe it. And so it's between the student engagement, it's the reminding them that they've got the skill set, that they've got the ability to be successful and not only graduate, but also, get employed past the NCLEX. Something we're looking to do is a test pass assurance, which if you take that NCLEX and don't pass, we'll pay for the next one. But you've got to go through the steps, and you've got to, the institution's got to say, yes, you're ready to take the test. You've done everything you were supposed to do. You need to take it in a certain time period. We're willing to put our money where our mouth is on the NCLEX piece. I know there's already been a motion and a second. I ask that you reconsider. Give us something.
So, any other discussion by board? So we're going to do the motion was made by John to accept the NEC's report and recommendation. It was seconded by Alita. We'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Abstain.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Abstain.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carries. We have 2 abstentions and 7 yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That would bring us to agenda item 19B3, Homestead School Incorporated Torrance Vocational Nursing Program, request to admit students. Margarita Valdez, NEC. Thank you for the report. We've received it and reviewed it. Do any board members have any questions regarding the report for the NEC? Seeing none, do we have a representative from Homestead School Incorporated Torrance Vocational Nursing Program? And if we could have you state your name and professional title and let us know whether or not you agree with the NEC's recommendation.
Good morning. Adele Blanco, Director of Nursing.
George Dairit, Admissions Director.
We accept and agree the recommendation of Margarita.
Do board members have any questions for the school? Donna?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to show you that I have a smiley face written on my face.
I can get the picture taken.
Thank you. Can we get a motion for the school?
I would move to accept the NEC's report as submitted regarding Homestead schools and implement the recommendations.
Do we have a second? Alita?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to accept the NEC's report and recommendations. It was motioned by John and seconded by Alita. Do we have any further discussion needed by the board? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Margarita.
So that brings us to 19B4, Medical Allied Career Center, Santa Fe Springs Vocational Nursing Program. Request to admit students. Beth DeYoung, Nursing NEC. Thank you. We've received your report and have reviewed it. Do any board members have any question for the NEC? I don't see any. Is there a representative from Medical Allied Career Center, Santa Fe Springs Vocational Nursing Program? And if you could state your title and let us know whether or not you agree with NEC's recommendation?
I'm Dr. Alfie Ignacio, the Director of the VN program. I agree with the recommendations of the NEC.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for the school representative? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report regarding Medical Allied Career Center, VN program, and accept the recommendation.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion made by John and a second by Paul to accept the NEC's report and recommendations. Is there any further discussion needed by the board? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
It's unanimous and motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth.
That will bring us to 19B5, Northwest College West Covina Vocational Nursing Program, request to admit students. Faith Silverman, NEC, thank you for the report. We've received it and reviewed it. Do any board members have questions for the NEC? Seeing none, is there, we got a representative from the school. If we could have you state your name and title and let us know whether or not you agree or
My
disagree.
name is Adnan Al-Muazzin. I am the director of the nursing program, and I do agree with the NIC recommendations.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for the school? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report regarding Northwest College West Covina and accept the recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
So is there any further discussion needed by the board? We've got a motion and a second motion by John, a second by Donna to accept the NEC's report and recommendations. Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Unanimous, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at 19B6, Summit Career College Santa Ana, formerly in Anaheim, Vocational Nursing Program, for request to admit students. Request for approval of new curriculum? Oh, that's a first. Okay.
As
And
part of
request-
the Education Committee recommendations is that they revise their entire curriculum before opening at the new school, so I included it in the report.
Oh, okay, thank you. And request for approval of new curriculum. Do any board members have questions for the NEC? Paula?
Yeah, do you know what's the reason why there's been no, so few students taking the test?
Yeah, they haven't had
in
any students
2017?
admitted into the program since 2014. They closed down the program, and then they moved it, and then revised the entire curriculum. They do have another campus in Colton. They revised that curriculum as well, and then they've reopened in Anaheim with the new curriculum. So I'm asking for approval for the new curriculum for this school and approval for their first class for this new school in Anaheim.
Any other board members have questions for the NEC? Seeing none, is there a representative from the school present? If we could have your name and title and whether or not you agree.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Crystal Nacio, the academic dean.
Renee Sheehan, Director of Nursing. And I do agree.
Do any board members have questions for the school? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report regarding Summit Career College Santa Ana and accept the recommendation.
I'll second that.
Paul?
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second, motion made by John and seconded by Paul to accept the NEC's recommendation and the report and recommendation, sorry. Do we need any further discussion by the board? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, so we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are at 19B7, West Coast Ultrasound Institute, Beverly Hills Vocational Nursing Program, for request to admit students. And thank you, Beth, the NEC consultant. We've received the report and read it, reviewed it. Do any board members have questions for the NEC? Seeing none, is there a representative from the school present? If we could have you state your name and title and whether or not you agree.
Dr. Henny Nashed, the director of the nursing program at West Coast Ultrasound Institute, Beverly Hills campus. I agree with the recommendation from the NAC.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions or comments for the school? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I would move to accept the report and recommendations of the NEC regarding West Coast Ultrasound Institute, Beverly Hills.
I second that.
So we have a motion and a second, a motion by John and second by Ken to accept the report and recommendations from the NECs. Do we need any further discussion on this? Seeing none, public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're at 19C, Education Division Report, Agenda Item, and Recommendations and Possible Action. Who's, I have it. Is it Jessica
Yes,
giving us?
I have
Oh, thank you, Jessica.
Currently, we have 126 approved schools. We have 6 that are pre-approved. These are the LVN programs. Previously, provisionally approved programs, we have 11 for a total of 143 vocational nursing programs. Under the PT, we have 12 approved schools and 1 that is on provisional for a total of 13. At this time, we have 49 programs that are in the proposed waiting area. 23 of them are being assisted currently by the NECs. 27 are pending placement onto being worked with. So when that gives us a whole total of 192 VN programs with the ones that we're working on. And we have 1 PT program that is pending, and that would give us 14. For a total of 206 programs. Our pass rates is something that we're really working with, and as you know, the Education Department is working with the Legislative Department and the Education committees to change our policies and regulations to the 75%. I have the quarter 3 information nationally. And for quarter 3, the state was at 74% for their quarter, and the average annual was 71%. Nationally, it was at 84%. So we're quite a bit below the national. For quarter 4, our quarter was 69%, and our average annual was 71%. Psych techs, quarter 3 was 72%. We do not have the quarter 4 pass rates yet for psych tech. Our workload, we have had 783 phone calls, 4,514 emails, and other written letters, we've had 3,060. Our education division staff, we have a vacancy in the supervising nursing education consultant and a nursing education consultant, the two vacancies, and management is considering a temporary staff to assist with support services.
Thank you. Any questions for the NEC?
Just one. Ms. Gomez, thank you for the report. What's the timeline for approval after application of new program?
Right now, it's probably about a year to 2 years for us working with the programs. It really depends on how quickly the programs get back with us with our questions. Some of the programs that we've been working with, it's a very slow process. Some of the programs get back with us very quickly. As we finish one, we move on to the next one. So
I understand it's a process. Do you have any recommendations for new programs regarding new applications?
I really don't at this time. We're
Other
working,
than,
yeah.
Other than the please cooperate.
Yes, please. The faster they get in their information when we ask them, and the more thorough that they enter the information, the quicker we can get them
Thank you.
evaluated.
Any other comments, Donna?
Jessica, if you guys look, it's concerning that California is so much lower than national. Do we have data to suggest why that is? I know that we're pending legislation to change our pass rate to 75, but that's not going to. I mean, that's the biggest lower. So why is California so much lower than the national standard?
I cannot answer that question.
Is anyone looking into it?
We're doing a lot of surveys with the different boards to try to find out what's the difference in the curriculums, what's the difference in the acceptance of the first-time test takers. And so we've done a lot of these surveys from the state boards. We will have a report for the Education Committee on April 10th, so for them to be able to evaluate.
Do you know offhand which state has the highest?
No, I don't. I do know that there are states that have pass rates in the 90s. And I do know that Hawaii, I believe, is one of the highest, but I'm not sure where they are.
I'm just curious because I received my LVN in New York, which back in the day when I received it, it was one of the highest. And then Hawaii also, I had a license in Hawaii as well. So it's just curious to me that in California, with all the opportunity and technology and everything that we have here, that we lag so far behind.
Right. One of the surveys we're also doing that was requested by Mr. Maxey was to find out what the differences in our curriculums are. And so this is a survey that was closed on the 22nd. So we haven't had a chance to really, truly evaluate it. But some of the things that I did see was our curriculum is more robust than most of the states. And so I cannot say why we don't have a good pass rate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 20, the Education Committee report. Thank you, Ms. Bernice.
Thank you, Madam President. The report, working very closely with staff, will be given by Jessica Gomez.
We had two reports that we had for the Education Committee meetings. One of them was on, it had to do with our data collection that we were working with the different schools. One thing that we were able to find out from the facilities that attended the meetings is that our students are missing their soft skills, the ability to communicate with physicians, the ability to communicate with staff, the ability to communicate with family members and patients in a professional way. Students are becoming more friendly. Students doesn't like me. Students are becoming too friendly with their patients and giving them too much personal information. This is what we're getting from the facilities. Also, students are not being taught real world what it's going to be like when they graduate. In school, nursing school, they're teaching to pass medications for 1 or 2 students. As soon as they get out on the floor, they're passing medications for 30. And so the facilities feel like the students are not ready to hit the floor running. And the facilities are admitting that they're cutting the length of their orientation process. So the new graduates are, in a sense, being set up to have a very difficult time when they start their new positions. And so we're continuing to do more work with that, and here is where we're doing the survey that Mr. Maxey had requested that we do to find out in the curriculums what are the other schools and boards requiring for their students to be able to meet some of these issues that our students are having when they come in. The other report that we had was that we're working on the 75% pass rate and how this is working, how to implement. We know that the board passed that we will have the 75% pass rate. We're looking at how to implement the 75% pass rate. During the education committee meeting, they suggested that we do have one more outreach with the schools because there was so much concern that was brought up at that time. So on March 1st, we have a meeting that we have scheduled. It's going to be a teleconference. We randomly selected 4 private schools, 4 adult schools, 4 community schools, and 2 PTs to do a teleconference with us for 2 hours to try to determine how we will best implement the 75%, so that we wanted a voice from each type of school equally. And so we will again have that report for the education committee on April 10th.
And one additional item that I think everyone will be pleased about, legal counsel agreed to explore if there is any way that we can provide names of testers to help at the request of so many of the institutions. And so we thank legal counsel about that. You have comments, sir?
Thank you. I've reached out initially to the stakeholders who are present at the meeting, and I will follow up with them and provide further guidance on that subject at the next Education Committee meeting.
Thank you. And thank you, Jessica. We have one more item under the Education Committee report, which is 20A, consideration and possible action on committee's recommendation to the board regarding program placement on provisional approval and or consideration of requests to admit students. And that's the Institute of Technology, Modesto. Donna, do you have a comment?
I just actually had a question or comment related to the other item. It's hard because like down here, you don't seem to.
Sorry, Donna.
That's okay, sorry. Just actually the question was for the committee, I guess, to determine. I have a concern that when we go to the 75% pass rate, that is going to place more schools on provisional. And we already have a our NECs are already inundated with enough schools that they're taking care of. So are we preparing for that in some way? 'Cause
This is part of the implementation that we're working on, and this is part of the telephone conference that we're having to see what schools feel is fair, to see how we can put it into regulation. We really want to work with the schools. We really want to get our pass rates up. So how we do the implementation will have a lot to do with this teleconference that we have and the recommendations. But we are looking at working with the schools on that.
are you looking at potentially, like if you took the schools that we have now and you drew out how many of them are not at 75, what the impact of that would be and how many NECs you would need in order to provisionally, to place them on provision? And is there a recommendation? Do we need to? You haven't done that.
We have initially looked, and right now, it's right close to 80% of our schools do not hit the 75%. If we were to say at the first quarter, you have to hit 75%, this is why we need to look on how to implement it, because we definitely don't want to put 85% of our schools on provisional the first quarter.
All right, thank you.
I have a point. Okay. Cheryl? Yes, all right. So the Ledge Reg Committee is also looking at the issue of releasing the question of releasing the identity of the test takers to the schools and to the public. I didn't know our council was looking into it. One of the things we were going to look at is some of the litigation involving the State Bar of California and some of those law schools requesting the identity of the test takers and the results. And so we can defer it to council if that's something that he will look at. Just want to refer him to that litigation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm aware of those cases, and that will be part of the analysis that goes into providing the guidance, which I will also share with that committee.
Thank you. Institute of Technology, Modesto Vocational Nursing Program. And the committees had a recommendation. However, in reviewing the report, we requested some additional information. And Margarita Valdez, would you speak to us?
Okay, the Institute of Technology was presented to the Education Committee for review, consideration of provisional status. They requested a class in November, which was denied. There were many things that we looked at from curriculum on forward. This is a fairly new school. They were approved in 2015. Their first class graduated in 2016. From 2016, the director that was there resigned. A new director was appointed, and from that time, I worked with her diligently. She revised the curriculum. The revised curriculum was approved March of 2017, so there will be no data that evaluates or give the results and outcomes of those changes. But in addition, when it came to the Education Committee, we presented that the director came up additional actions that had been taken, from staff development to new staff hire to policy changes and different actions that were being implemented. As a result of that, they sent me all the information. It was put into the report, and that is why my report does continue to, and the Education Committee, to present it here, to put them on provisional status for a period of 2 years, but in addition to provide them and approve the recommendation to approve an admission of one class based on everything that occurred and that they're a fairly new school and the director had resigned and the new director diligently with all the faculty put other actions in place.
Thank you.
Does any board members have questions for the NEC? Seeing none, is there a representative from the school? If we could have you state your name and title and let us know if you agree with the recommendations coming out of the Education Committee.
Hi, my name is Paula Richards. I'm the Director of Nursing at the Modesto IoT
Can we
campus.
have you speak into the mic?
You can lower it too.
Okay, I'm vertically challenged. Okay, my name is Paula Richards. I am the Director of Nursing at the Modesto IoT campus, as well as the IoT campus in Clovis. I totally want to thank Ms. Valdez for all of her support, direction, and recommendations that completely assisted us with improving our program and putting further improvements into place without being under pressure to do so. I agree with her recommendation and want to thank the Education Committee for their review of our program.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for the school? Seeing none. So Ken, am I correct? Coming out of the Education Committee recommendation, it's a motion and a second. Is that correct or no? Am I wrong?
Madam President, we did not, because there was new information presented at the Education Committee that had not been reviewed by the NEC, and therefore the report before us did not go, the current report is new and did not go through the Education Committee.
Okay. Thank you. So.
And therefore, no recommendation.
Got it. Just had to make sure. So do any board members have questions, or can we get a motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's report and recommendations regarding the Institute of Technology, Modesto.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. It was motioned by John and second by Donna to accept the NEC's report and recommendations. Do we have any further discussion needed by the board? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
At this time, we'll break for lunch and then come back at 1 o'clock. That gives us an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you. We're going to come back on record and restart the meeting. Before we get started with agenda item 21, one of the NECs has gotten some information that Donna was asking about earlier. So, Ms. Jessica? Yes. If you could take over?
Donna, you asked the question how many schools would be affected by changing the number to 75%. I gave the number from a report that I had looked at last week. Sue Ellen Clayworth, one of our retired annuitants, was watching the situation. She went to our pass rates and found that it would be 35%. And she did the calculations right after you asked that question. So as of for the fourth quarter, if we did it counting fourth quarter of 2017, it would be 35%.
We have roughly 146. How many schools do we have?
206. They don't count, right?
My 146, yes.
Okay, that's a number of schools.
It's still a good number of schools that would be affected, but it's, at least it's not the 80%, which I had seen for the initial report. And I just wanted to make sure that you got the correct answer.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. So that brings us to agenda item 21, the Executive Officer's Report on Nursing Decisions for Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians Program.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. This is regular board item. These are the non-controversial decisions about the variety of schools who've asked for renewals, and et cetera. There were 41 programs in this report. They date all the way back to November of 2017 and all the way through, 2 weeks ago. Really only the last dozen or so that I had got to see. By the way, I want to give another big shout out to the NECs who walked through this process very, very carefully with me so that I understood what was going on. There's really no board action required for this item, but you should have a look.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 22. The Enforcement Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Ken Maxey, an Enforcement Committee member. My colleague, Committee Chair Samantha James Perez, is not present today, so I will deliver the Enforcement Committee report on her behalf. The Enforcement Committee met on February 9th, 2018. In attendance was board staff as well as myself and Mrs. James Perez. The Enforcement Division currently has an 8% vacancy rate. There are 37 total positions with 3 vacancies. The 3 vacancies are 1 staff service manager, 1 in the intake and enhanced screening unit, and then secondly, the interchangeable staff services analyst, associate governmental program analyst in the intake and enhanced screening unit. And then the last one is the interchangeable staff service analyst, associate governmental program analyst in the probation unit. Since the December board meeting, the board has brought on 4 more new staff. Stacy Higashi, supervising special investigator. Jeff Hicks, staff services analyst. Rosemary Chavez, staff services analyst. And Hong Wong, staff services analyst. Is there any questions thus far from the board? Moving on to intake and enhanced screening update. The Enforcement Division has completed its reorganization, creating a new business unit called the Intake and Enhanced Screening Unit. The reorg did not require any new positions, just redirection of staff. While the structure of the unit is complete, DOI and the Chief of Enforcement are working jointly to formalize business processes and procedures. The complaints will focus on licenses cases involving subsequent arrest records, as well as applicant cases involving criminal history, as well as out-of-state discipline and cross-reporting between other healthcare boards. The intake and the enhanced screening unit will focus on incoming complaints as well as handling public complaints that do not require field investigations. Now I'd like to move on to AB 1229 compliance. The chaptering of AB 1229 put 2 requirements on the Enforcement Division. The first being submit a report no later than April 1st, 2018, demonstrating progress in implementing the board's monitor's recommendations. Board staff has prepared a spreadsheet tabbed agenda item 23C that you all should have, indicating current progress of the board. What's that? 22. Okay, it's 22C. My apologies. The Enforcement Committee continues to work on the board staff to fully implement these recommendations. At this time, the Enforcement Committee requests that the board review and approve the updates responses.
So, do you want to finish the report and then we'll?
What was that?
Do you want to finish the report and then we'll take that up at the end of?
Sure. The second part of AB 1229 requires board staff to meet with DOI and submit a report identifying allegations, summary of the complaint status, and whether the case is with DOI or board staff. And I thought Brian Vu could actually come up to the podium and give his report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Maxey. At this time, I would request the board to take agenda item 22B, overview of enforcement activity, which shows board enforcement division statistics.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Within this spreadsheet, please look at the 8th and 9th column. The 8th column is quarter 2 of 17 and 18. And just to provide data ranges, quarter 2 is October 1st through December 31st. And I have a partial data extract of quarter 3. Quarter 3 is from January 1st to March 31st, but for the time this report was generated, it's reflecting January 1st to January 25th. I'm going to high level go over some trends within the enforcement division. If you look at quarter 2, 17-18, the intake desk has received 614 complaints and subsequent arrest records. That's a dip from quarter 1 from 706, but nothing abnormal. If you look at the reporting for investigations assigned, pending, and completed, we have broken down the desk investigations to reflect the new intake and enhanced screening unit, to reflect the enforcement monitor's recommendation. As seen in the start of 17-18 quarter 3 breakdown, we now have a line item for the enhanced screening unit. Total cases pending have continued to rise in quarter 2, 17-18. As reported in the previous board meeting, the complaints unit has recently reopened CLPX cases or cases closed pending adjudication. As a result, cases artificially closed pending adjudication are now open, which accounts for the increase. In the current Q3 quarter, non-sworn staff has seen a decrease in the number of cases pending. Approximately 174 cases that were pending with the non-sworn unit were identified as suitable for the new enhanced screening desk and have been reassigned. And what I mean by that is we looked at the non-sworn queue, and there were over 100 cases that were deemed less egregious in terms of the CPEI index and were transferred over to enhanced screening. That can be done at the desk level. Straightforward cases where they have to make a couple calls, get internal reports, and make their assessment, so that doesn't require field activity. In quarter 2 of 17-18, there was an increase in the total number of completed cases from 544 to 577. The number of days it is taking to complete an investigation in quarter 3 and 2 has risen slightly from quarter 1, but marginally. This can be attributed to the reopening of the CLPX cases. The citation desk continues to issue citations without the restoration of the CE program, which was the bulk of previous citations. Citations have fluctuated from single digits to double digits. The number of AG total cases referred to the AG's office has decreased from 70 in quarter 1 to 30 in quarter 2 and 22 in the partial data extract of quarter 3. Cases pending AG are contingent on cases referred from the complaints and enhanced screening unit. So those do fluctuate from time to time. At this time, are there any questions regarding board statistics?
No, but I just want to thank Brian Vu and his team for all the work that they've done on this reporting and for the countless meetings that we've had. And I know we're going to continue to move forward and be right by this ask. And just so the board knows, the committee has reviewed and approved this report. DOI and the board staff will meet the last week of February to discuss it.
Correct. The formal meeting date for that meeting will be Tuesday, February 27th. We'll discuss the contents of that report.
Do I have a motion to accept this?
It comes over.
Report?
The report and recommendation comes over after a hearing of the two-member advisory committee, so a motion isn't necessary. It could just be, there can be comment and voted upon.
And then the report 22C is included in the recommendation or is a separate?
I was referring to what's in 22A, the committee report and recommendations.
The 22A, because they were. So, do board members have further discussion on the items for 22A and B? Donna?
I do. Can you explain to me more slowly, because Mr. Maxey just sped right through it?
Certainly.
Exactly what the enhanced enforcement unit is going to do?
So a new business unit was created to assist with the non-sworn unit. Right now with the non-sworn unit, prior to triaging cases, there were over 400 cases pending with that unit. And in terms of, right now we have two buckets of triage. We have, when it goes to the intake desk, it can go to the sworn level, which is DFI. Those are the more egregious in terms of CPI index. And then we have level 3 and 4, which goes to non-sworn staff. With that case, there are investigations that don't necessarily belong with that unit. An example is a complaint about a licensee, a VN who was sleeping on the job. She's been licensed for 15 years. First offense, no patient harm. Again, not every allegation will be uniform, but for those type of allegations where it's one instance, no patient harm, for the most part, an analyst will not have to really go out in the field to come up with a fact-finding report. You can contact the facility, get the in-house report, make some phone calls, and close the report at the desk level. So we felt in terms of efficiency, it was best to kind of parse out that one unit to kind of add an enhanced screening component so that non-sworn staff can focus on cases that really require field activity. That was the purpose of this business unit, to kind of alleviate some of the stress that was handled by non-sworn staff.
And that should equivalate into us being able to more quickly investigate things that need to be investigated.
Correct.
Because they won't be stuck behind somebody that stepped on the job.
Correct. So instead of kind of date order received, you kind of go by priority, and then field staff would obviously handle the high priority cases.
Thank you.
Any further discussion by board?
So since we had a recommendation from the committee to accept the report and the recommendations there for 22A and 22B, it does not require a motion or a second because it came from the committee, but we will do a roll call vote. Donna?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes?
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
So motion carried. So we'll move on to 22C.
As Mr. Maxey alluded to, 22C is the updated responses to the legislature. With the chaptering of AB 1229, there were two components that was mandated for the board. One of the components was to submit a report no later than April 1st, 2018, demonstrating progress in implementing the recommendations set by the enforcement monitor. At December's board meeting, we submitted some responses to the final report. This spreadsheet is a continuation of those responses, reflecting updates in that time span. So they go with the same recommendations. However, some responses or updates have been amended to kind of show progress within the board. So I'm more than happy to take any questions regarding any recommendations.
Do any board members have any questions for Ryan for the report or update?
Not to take too much time, but I'm wondering if we want to review the not implemented briefly to see where, what are, what process we are in, and are there steps to be taken between now and April that maybe these categories can change? Is that appropriate?
Can we do that?
Chair's discretion.
So it would review through Madam President, I was going to ask something similar, and maybe if we put it together, clearly this is to occur over a period of time. And what might be helpful, given there are a few that are partially implemented and some that will begin at a later time, to maybe put some time frame to it. I think that might, that would be helpful to me, and I don't know if that will help my colleague or not.
Yes.
That's correct. This document is a living document, and many of the recommendations can't be fulfilled the next day. It's a bigger milestone in progress. An example is having a new business unit to assist non-sworn staff. Yes, we have the restructure of a new unit. There's a lot of business processes we need to implement, such as procedures, staffing, to really make that truly complete. So a majority of these recommendations are partially complete because we're in progress. But like I said, it is a living document to hold the enforcement division accountable to every board meeting or every subsequent meeting. We kind of reflect updates to show how we move forward.
Elaine?
Thank you, Madam President. I think to further what Mr. Wu was saying is, and I think to respond more fully to the question and suggestion, all the things that are not implemented, and as Brian was saying, partially implemented, there are plans in place, and things that are not implemented indicated as non-implemented. There's a certain place in our internal planning of doing that. But to I think Ms. Norton's question, certainly we could put another field into that spreadsheet that would kind of outline when we anticipate starting to progress on these items. Is that what you had in mind? And Dr. Basta Martinez, I think
I just think that would be helpful.
Certainly.
For everyone. And again, just to reiterate what you just said, it's not that they aren't being worked on, but there's a progression in which different things can occur. And if step 1 isn't done, we can't skip to step 5, for example.
Donna?
Brian, I know we had spoken about the 60 to 90 day in the meetings, and can you just talk a little bit about that?
Correct. So in terms of the enforcement committee, we kind of broke it down to a 30-day plan, a 90-day plan. But in terms of the overall structure of kind of response to the legislature, we felt it more adequate to kind of just have a mid-February update. And at the next formal submission, we'll have an update for that time frame. But in terms of the enforcement committee, we go over those planned milestones to inform the committee of what kind of our time frame is and that plan of action. But for the next submission, we're more than happy to include whatever line items or updates or columns that the board does request.
Donna?
I think I'd just like to echo, it would be helpful for me, because I don't sit on the enforcement committee. It's difficult to sit here and, all I have is the recommendation, the status, and the mid-February update. It doesn't tell me where you are in the process.
Okay.
So I think it would be helpful just telling, especially for the not implemented, the reason why it's not implemented. Is it coming next month, or are there other things? Because if I could just ask, where are we with recommendation number 1? It's also recommendation number 5. Because we do seem to have a lot of licensees that read a lot of cases because they didn't, they answered this question wrong.
Correct.
And I've never, so I know there's been some talk about that. But I have no update on where we are with it.
So 1 and 5 go hand in hand, and the forefront of this recommendation is the licensing function because it's applicants submitting information for licensure. Enforcement's the back end because the way the instructions are worded, because there's so many bodies of law, it's very technical, that oftentimes it can confuse a prospective applicant and they will over-report, causing more work for enforcement in the back end. Because once we see anything, we have to do our due diligence. So we're working in collaboration with licensing and legal to look at the verbiage of this, the way that the directions are set out, because we need to capture the bodies of law for sure, but at the same time, we want to make sure it's as intuitive as possible to a reader. So that is a work in progress.
Would you say that we're closer to?
I think when you deal with law and that type of language, it's very, the instructions itself is like 8 or 9 sentences. But at the same time, again, there's so many different bodies of law contained within those instructions. We want to make sure that we don't take away from the meaning of that instruction. So it is a joint conversation, again, with legal and licensing to ensure that we best capture the most intuitive structure of this instruction. So I wouldn't say it's close. It's a work in progress, and I hope to have an update at the next meeting.
Okay, I didn't mean close, I said closer.
Oh,
Closer can still be this far away.
Moving forward, not backward.
Brian, I had a question. When you refer to the bodies of law contained within the form, is that like what I've seen in some of our other forms where they'll state a specific, I don't know, specific aspect of it that needs to be done, and then such and such code number, such and such?
Correct. With this specific instruction, it talks about convictions and reporting. So it refers to health and safety code, penal code. And because of those codes, you have kind of lengthy subsections you kind of include within the instructions, which for a layperson can be very confusing.
So you're actually including the language, not just a reference to the code
Correct.
section? Okay.
The reason being, we want to be as intuitive to the prospective applicant as possible. We can't guarantee that they will actually cross-reference with that actual body of law. So it's just we're working again to find the best way to go about this and still communicate the full intent of what the instructions.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? And this requires a motion from? Okay.
The report is being presented for informational purposes. It expresses the work of the committee or the division and need not be voted upon as a motion since it's not making a specific recommendation.
So it requires no motion?
No motion.
Oh, thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 23, the evaluation committee report.
Thank you, Madam President. Staff has worked very closely with the committee, and our staff, Jen Johnson, will make our report. Thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President, Vice President, and members of the board. Agenda item 23A, the Evaluation Committee Report. Board members present, Dr. Bernice Baste Martinez and Alita Carpenter. Staff present, Ken Swenson, Board Legal Counsel, Brian Clifford, Acting Executive Officer at that time, Jen Johnson, myself, Rochelle Lee, Admin Support Services Manager, Siki Chen, Staff Service Analyst, and Samantha Coleman, our Associate Governmental Program Analyst. The Evaluation Committee met once since the last board meeting on January 19th, and the next scheduled meeting is April 13th. We went over the call center update, which Rochelle gave that in her division report. Staffing update, we reviewed current vacancies in the licensing division, and I will give a more detailed update in my division report, which is the next agenda item. We spoke about the continuing education audit letter update. Our chair, Bernice Baste Martinez, stated the concerns about the CE audit letter that they were addressed at our last board meeting in November.
The board will not mail out notification to all licensees, as it would not be cost effective, or it would also create a huge workload for staff. What she requested was that board staff, we revamp the CE audit process. And how the board's working to do that is we conducted 2 meetings already with staff that have worked with the CE audit processes, the licensing division, and also with legal. And we will bring it back to the evaluation committee in April. And we are also working with the education committee, and that has been added to their agenda for their next meeting. Updated renewals and ILF forms. Legal is still reviewing, and we will have an update at our next committee. Processing times for evaluation unit and admin unit. The processing times were given and reviewed, and I will give a more detailed update in my next agenda report. We also discussed strategic goals. The board vice president, Bernice, requested staff to develop workable benchmarks regarding time and measures. We also reviewed any previous agenda items that required action from staff, and we came up with a list. It was provided to the committee, and we have, I'm happy to report that all action items were completed, except we have legal still reviewing some of our updated forms. And then also, actually the last item here for status on training provided to front counter staff, that was completed. And then number 8, discussion and possible action regarding cloud upload. I have a separate memo that I wrote, and I'll discuss that further. And that completes the evaluation report. Any questions? Seeing none? Hearing none?
So 23B?
Yes. So the evaluation division report, the staffing update, since the last board meeting, I had, at the November board meeting, I actually had 3 vacancies as far as my evaluator staff. They have all been filled. All 3 vacancies have been filled. 2 of them have started already, and the 3rd person is starting next week. So I discussed that the processing times, we would see an increase in the processing times, and I'll go over it more in the next few pages. But I am happy to report that the evaluation unit has no vacancies. The CE audit program update. We worked, the staff from licensing and education units, we formed a working group. We met on January 4th and February 8th, and they actually, since this report was written, they met again. So we're working collaboratively to restart the program, and we're addressing the following items: reviewing regulations for improvements to the process, as well as updating forms as necessary. Staff that have previously worked on the CE audits was redirected to other duties in late 2017. So we're going to see if we need, how many staff we would need to make this work for the board. And then changes to Breeze are being made to improve the utilization of Breeze in regards to completing the CE audits. And one of my staff, IT staff, did a presentation to the group and letting us know on the updates that will take place towards the summer. The working plan is to basically meet bi-weekly to continue to identify areas for improvement, and we will work to complete the following action items for the next board meeting in May. Those are to develop a business process map for the CE audits, revise regulations and update forms, identify staff resources to handle the CE audit duties, and that's our update for the CEs. I'm on page 2, application for evaluations. I had discussed at the last board meeting that we would see an increase in our processing times due to staff shortage in our unit. The shortage was due to 2 promotions internally and then a retirement. So as I stated earlier, those vacancies have been filled. We've updated all the evaluations duty statements to reflect appropriate workloads since the last quarter. We will decrease our processing times in application processing, specifically with the equivalency applications in the next quarter, as we'll be fully staffed. One of the changes that I am making is, when I first came on the board, a lot of the evaluators, they had 3 different classifications. They were all doing the same work. So what we did was we updated the duty statements to reflect the classification and what they should be working on, which type of apps. Our equivalency applications are our most complex, and so now my 3 SSA staff will only be working on equivalency applications. So by our next board meeting, I should be able to report a decrease in those processing times. So that's a change that's taken effect March 1st. For applications for school online, our quarterly average is 3.9 weeks. Schools in-house, 2.6 weeks. Equivalency, 25 weeks. Verifications online, 11 weeks. Verifications in-house, quarterly average, 9.3. Endorsements online, 1.4 weeks. Endorsements in-house, 1.7 weeks. For psych techs, for schools online, our quarterly average is 6.6 weeks. For schools in-house, 5.1 weeks. And that was a spike due to the evaluator that retired. She only processed the PT apps. So as I reported at our last board meeting, all evaluators have been trained on processing these PT apps. For equivalencies for PTs, 18.6 weeks. Re-exams, 3.4 weeks. And initial licensure, 2 weeks. For our results desk, before I move on, is there any questions on those processing times? Okay. For the results desk, for pass and fail, desk processing times for October, 2.8 weeks. November was 3.2. December, 2.7. For psych techs, it's basically 1 week for processing those. Amount of results processed. For VNs, in October was 889. November, 803. December, 758. And for psychiatric technicians, for October, 47. November, 66. And December, 57. I just did a little screenshot of the number of applications received. I don't really need to go over all of them, but you can see in December for VNs, initial exam for October was 640, November was 490, and then there was a spike in December of 766. I talked to my staff and asked, why was the increase? And basically, there's a lot of schools that graduate in December, so everyone's applying at that time. For psychiatric technicians, the same. October, for initial exam, there was 7. For November, there was 7, and then it spiked up to 116 in December because of the graduating classes. And then our population for licensees for VNs is 122,476, and for PTs, 11,642. Any questions so far? Go ahead, Paula.
For the total number of licenses, is this the number of active license or the?
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, I also included in this report our processing times. This was also given in our licensing and evaluation committee. And you can see for schools online, I just gave our average quarters, but you can see for school online in December, we've really never went over 4 weeks, and we did this time, so that's why you see the yellow. And that was at 5.5 weeks. Still, our quarter average was under 4 weeks. The next board meeting, we should see a decrease in the processing times. Of course, our red is the equivalency applications, which I just addressed. We will only have our SSAs working on these, so I'm pretty excited that our backlog should get cleared up, not in 3 months, but within 6 months, I would say, to be safe. That completes my division report. Are there any questions? No?
And then 23C?
Actually, part of my report, and I'm not sure if it was included, we did put our processing times on our website. And so, in an effort to accomplish the board's strategic plan goal, number 1.3, processing times for all LBN and PT application types have been placed on the website. The board staff anticipate this could lower the call volume of inquiries from applicants requesting the status updates on their application, as well as provide increased transparency from our board. This will be updated every Monday, and I just took a screenshot of what it looks like. Any questions on that? 23C, proposal to receive student transcripts electronically because the cloud drive. The board has worked with DCA Office of Information Services staff to create online storage facility that is secure and accessible from the internet, named the cloud drive. This is already implemented with the Board of Registered Nursing and for all schools that apply for licensure for their graduating classes. The licensing division staff met with BRN, executive officer, chief of licensing, and the licensing manager via teleconference. And we discussed how they started using the cloud drive and their processes. We conducted a pilot with the school to upload the record of nursing program documents to the cloud drive, and I'm happy to report it was successful. Yesterday at the directors forum, I spoke about this and letting the directors know that this is the direction that the board is going, and if there were any other schools that maybe would want to volunteer to contact me or their NECs, and we can give them the instructions on how to do that. So again, this is still pilot mode, but we're just working to see how this could benefit everybody, basically all the stakeholders. The benefits that we identified, faster processing times for our board, cost effective, it enhances the school reputation due to increasing their pass rates because the students are able to test faster. Eliminate lost documents, graduates are hired faster, and overall increase customer satisfaction and stakeholders. That's it. Any questions?
Do board members have any questions?
I had a quick question. Jen?
Yes, ma'am.
In your directors meeting, how effective were our persuasive points?
They were really excited, actually. I was
Were they?
watching. Yeah. And I don't know if the NECs got any feedback on that, but while I was there, they were really excited and a lot of head nodding and, smiles. So I did talk to a few of them today, this morning, and, I said, here's my information. Give me a call if your school wants to try to do this. I also did a PowerPoint cloud presentation. I haven't submitted it really to the directors yet because I want to get a couple more schools, involved in it and trying our pilot.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Paula?
Earlier today, we heard from one of the schools that their passing rate is impacted by previous cohorts that have taken a long time to get their license. Is this something, your pilot, that maybe is going to facilitate the passing rate only accounting for the current cohort, or is it only going to store their transcript?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, it would only be storing the transcripts.
The transcript, okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I'm just curious if we had ever thought about having a pass rate to show the current cohort versus a pass rate that is inclusive of past and present
I can bring that to the evaluation committee and the licensing committee, which we would have to talk to education. That's kind of a NEC question, I think.
Oh,
But working together, I'm sure we can come up with something, and I can report that back at the next board meeting.
Great, yeah.
Jessica,
Just
did you
curious.
have something to add? With the pass rates, we have been evaluating and contacting other states to find out how far back they accept first-time test takers. And this is in part of the report that I will be putting in on April the 10th for them. But I can tell you that we've only been able to find one program that does not count first-time test takers all the way back. One state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do any other board members have questions for Jen of the report? Thank you. And that will bring us to agenda item 24, the licensing committee report.
Yeah, I've recently taken over this committee as the chair and will be working with my colleague Paula Amazola Herrera, excuse me for mangling your name. And we look forward to working together. At the last meeting, Tammy and Does, our president, was the chair. I'm going to ask Jen to step forward again. Jen is the manager of the license division, and to give this report for us also.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Jen.
So the licensing committee report in front of you, the board members that were present were Tammy Mendoza and Paul Sellers. Staff present, Ken Swinson, board legal counsel, myself, Rochelle Lee, admin support service manager, and Siki Chen, my staff service analyst. We met once since the last board meeting, which was January 19th, and we are scheduled to meet again March 27th. We gave a staffing update on the current vacancies in the licensing division and provided updates on the recruitments, which I just gave. We also discussed unassigned cash, cite, and fine update. And our legal counsel is following up with enforcement and our Deputy Attorney General to discuss enforcement stipulations. So we'll get an update on that in March. Pocket cards, status of notification of employers. I worked with a few people on outreach to basically let all staff from the facilities that employ the LVNs and PTs to not request the pocket cards for condition of employment. Since the pocket cards were discontinued in September of last year, we were getting feedback from different stakeholders saying that these supervising nurses are still requesting the pocket cards. So I worked with California Correctional Healthcare Services, California Association of Psychiatric Technicians, and Department of Public Health, all executive healthcare staff at facilities that employ the LVNs and PTs were notified via teleconference, a newsletter, and on their website. And so what I did basically, we had posted this information back in September of last year regarding the pocket card discontinuation. And we took that language that the evaluation committee came up with, and I forwarded it to these stakeholders that I just mentioned. And they put it on their websites. So I know for CDCR and California Correctional Healthcare Services, they have a website called Lifeline, and that was updated on their website as well as their newsletter, which I believe is called the same thing. I know that I reached out to California Association of Psych Techs, and I worked with one of the liaisons there for the PTs, and she said they also put it on their website, and I did check and it was on there. So that's the update for the pocket cards. The call center, Rochelle basically reported the efforts are still pending with HR. We're working with them. We meet once a month, and that is still in effect. licensing division performance measures, the stats were given, and the phone stats as well were presented to the committee. We also discussed equivalency application time study. So at the last board meeting, I talked about how at this board meeting I would be able to have an update because we just started the time study. I believe it was like in October. It's taking, some time to get all the information back. What we have been able to identify is for cashiering in the mailroom and the labels desk, the average time for cashiering and mailroom is 1 day. And then the average time for the label desk is 5 days. And then we do not have an update as far as the applications for the equivalency. That would be the last step of this time study because, again, we're working on June apps. So by the next board meeting, I will have the equivalency application time study part ready. And then any questions on that?
I had a question on the pocket cards.
Yes.
Is there an update on the situation with the vendor and perhaps?
Not that I could speak on right now, and that is advice from legal. It's still pending. We did get the data that we were looking for. We work closely with our budget analyst, Samantha, and also our IT by pulling reports and then confirming with the vendor. Actually, I have a meeting with Mr. Swenson coming up next week, I believe, to go over all the data. And so to answer your question, it's still pending.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And then just to reiterate, lastly, the board president reported that she would leave that committee on January 19th, and Amazola de Herrera will replace her. So welcome, Paula. And that concludes the licensing report.
I have a question.
Donna?
Sorry. I have an overall question. I don't exactly know where it fits in, so I'm just going to stick it in here.
Okay.
So I've recently been contacted by 2 of the 122,000 LVNs that we cover. And there seems to be a problem since we went to the online with the Breeze. And I pulled up an email that they sent me, so I'm just going to read it to you.
That's no problem.
So it says, recently, within the last couple of years, the board has gone to an electronic system for renewal of licensure. Since this change, there can be no exchange of paper. The physical licenses have been phased out. You are only approved to work by information obtained from the Breeze website. Should there be any issues with the website or human error, the onus is on the employee. The nurse was informed by the board that it can take up to 8 weeks to see their information in the website. The nurse was put on suspension and lost 10 days of pay. So is there I don't even know how to answer this. I'm thinking that she waited too long to renew her license, but how long after you renew online does it actually show? I looked on your paper, it says instantly.
So, out of the 5 nurses that renewed online at my institution, I was one of them. Mine showed up in 2 days. The other one, she paid online, it showed up the next day. And the other 3, they were within the 3 days that it posted online. So it could be, because I know there's human error when we enter stuff online. It could be that they didn't, or somebody didn't click a box that they should have clicked. But then that may pose another problem.
Honestly, I think it's a combination of things, Donna. My staff don't process the renewals, so I don't want to speak on someone else's unit. However, I've had calls where LVNs have been in that similar situation. I do want to note that the board sends out these renewals way in advance, weeks before their expiration. And when they wait last minute, that could be one reason. We get a lot of calls saying, my license is going to expire tomorrow, and, I'm trying to renew online. And it takes several weeks to process renewals. So to answer your question, I think that off record, if you forward that to me, I can dig a little bit more deeper instead of just giving an answer.
Okay,
right
but
now.
it's not a number of weeks, so it's pretty, like, for most people, it will be, if they're doing it, if they do it correctly and they do it
Yeah, it's days.
days, it should be days, not weeks.
Absolutely.
And if there's an issue with it, then there could be weeks, like.
Yes.
I know when I renewed mine one time, I had changed my address, and bad person, I forgot to update the board. I'm just gonna admit that.
That also is another factor.
Yeah, that affected my license renewal because it took me a lot longer to get my license renewal that way. So everything being said, it should not take this long. Have you noticed has the Breeze site ever went down that we're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
No? Okay. It's probably an anomaly, but I thought I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make go ahead. I was just wanting to make a comment since we're talking about the pocket cards, and this one line item is very small. However, I want to compliment the unit and Jen on her work on this outreach to all of these different organizations, and the tremendous amount of heavy lifting to get these notifications accomplished. And I just wanted to thank her and her staff for the job well done.
Thank you.
I would second that too.
Thank you, Donna.
It's amazing.
Any other comment or questions for? Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to agenda item 25, the legislation committee report.
Yes, this is Cheryl Turner, and the Legislation Regulation Committee met on February 9th, 2018. The members that were present, Cheryl Turner, John Deerking, were the board members, Elaine Yamaguchi, Brian Clifford, Samantha Kalma, and Jessica Gomez read reports. During the first part of the meeting, the executive officer, Elaine Yamaguchi, introduced herself to us and told us a bit about her background, and we welcomed her. The next item we had was a legislative regulation staffing update. And last November, the board voted to have a full-time leg-reg staffer, but the executive office determined that right now the need is only part-time, probably due to 1229 being resolved. And so Samantha Kalma will be our official leg-reg staff person, and she's raising her hand to be acknowledged. Thank you, welcome. She was always there, but now she's official, and she will combine her duties as the budget analysis for the board. There was a discussion again about combining various committees of the board. One of them was the possibility of combining strategic outreach with the Leg-Reg committee. So that issue will be coming up, so we may want to refer to the committee structure for that outlines the duties of each committee. And I guess at some point we'll decide whether it would be more efficient to combine them or not. We were presented with a legislative calendar for our committee to consider, and most of the bills that were introduced in 2017 had to be decided upon by January 31st of this year in order to pass. And so that calendar was very helpful, and you may want to refer to that for your own information. We also discussed the legislative tracking of various bills that were proposed during 2017. 5 of the ones, assembly bills, and 3 of the Senate bills that we were following in 2017 failed to pass. And 1 assembly bill and 1 Senate bill was gutted and amended and no longer applies to this board. And there are 2 new assembly bills that will impact us, AB 888 and AB 1659, both by Assembly Member Lowe, which I'll discuss in a moment. And so we looked at this legislative tracking grid, and If anyone has any suggestions as to what other items that might be included, please let us know. One of them that we have we've added bill analysis by the staff. So it's a shortened version. If you want to look at that to help you in addition to analyzing and reading the exact proposed bill, you can do that. It also includes the staff's recommendation as to whether they support the proposed bill or whether they're neutral on it or exactly what their position is. But that is separate from, okay, but of course that's separate from the board's recommendation. All right, so now let's discuss Assembly Bill 888, and that relates to the default decisions. There have been many default decisions that have come before the board. And that is the circumstance where the board seeks to provide enforcement against a licensee, and they send out notice. The licensee has an opportunity to come to hearing if they are concerned about what's the impact on their license. And if they fail to respond for various reasons, like for instance, they fail to update their address, they do not receive that mail, and they don't answer in time, there is a default. So we've calculated that over the last 3 years, there have been approximately 429, and Ms. Kalma, if you need to listen to this, and because you provided the data for this, 429 total default decisions that arose, and
So basically, that statistic was just to show we basically pulled those numbers to see how many default decisions are non-adopted, and out of those 400, what was it, 429, I think?
Yeah, 429.
None of them were non-adopted; they were all adopted.
All right. So this bill is proposing that the board relinquishes its right to make a decision about default decisions and pass that over to the executive officer. And so the part of the data that was presented and requested by the committee is to show us what are the statistics, how many are we adopting or not adopting, and we just discussed that. But keeping in mind the board does have the right to non-adopt. In other words, they can disagree that there is going to be a default. And Mr. Swinson, he may correct me on this. Okay, so if we disagree, then the matter will continue on and maybe possibly a hearing will be called. So we do have that power, but typically we never non-adopt. Say that correctly?
Yes, under the current law and regulations, the board retains the ability to reject a default decision, but that authority is rarely, and in fact, recently never been exercised. This bill would require the delegation of authority to handle default decisions be made, and it would give the executive officer the power to do that, which under longstanding guidance that the legal division has provided to the board would not otherwise be within the board's power to delegate that authority. So it will require a statutory change. That's what this bill accomplishes.
So another issue is whether or not due process was followed. The board can look at the default decision and make that determination also in deciding to non-adopt. The flip side of that is that since the board typically does always non-adopts or adopts a default decision, that would reduce their workload if the executive officer were to take on those responsibilities. And it's my understanding that there are a few boards out there under DCA that have already transferred that power to their executive officer. There are a few. So that's something that we are watching, and obviously we don't have any ultimate power over this bill because it's a bill by the legislature, but we can certainly give input and feedback, our position on it, and notify the legislature if we feel strongly enough about it. Any questions about that particular proposed bill?
I just have a comment, Ms. Turner.
Yes, go
Also
ahead.
a member of the Ledge Committee.
Yes.
The language contained in the current version of AB 888 was at one time also part of our sunset bill, AB 1229. And that follows the enforcement monitor's recommendation to delegate authority to the EO, the ability to sign off on defaults.
All right. All right, so we're watching that. The next one is AB 1659, Healing Arts Inactive Licenses. This would specifically prohibit licensees from representing that they are active when they're inactive, and also is proposing to reduce their fee, that they pay a different fee if they go on inactive status. And there is an analysis about we're trying to analyze what the financial impact on us, our board, would be, but we haven't heard anything about what the new license would be for inactive licensees. All right, so the bill analysis also includes a budget analysis, and our committee recommended that the threshold be $25,000. If the impact of the bill to our board is more than $25,000, then we would want more details about how they arrived at those numbers and what the true costs are. But below $25,000, we felt that that was a good number so that the board wouldn't have to spend the staff time actually doing a detailed analysis unless the board member requested.
Well, actually, we would do a detailed fiscal analysis on it. What we were discussing was whether or not we want to include that in the analysis that goes to the board members. So we'll have the complete analysis, but we wanted to determine whether or not we wanted that breakdown for the analysis that we provide to you guys at the board meetings. And it was discussed that 25,000, anything under 25,000, we wouldn't need a complete breakdown. And anything over that, we would.
Okay, so are you saying that you would do an analysis no matter what, but you
Yes.
would only report us the information if it exceeds
For
25,000?
I'll give you an example. So like going back to AB 888, in the fiscal analysis that I provided to you guys, I told you guys that we save approximately $16,000 per year on staff time and the cost of materials. In my full analysis that I do in-house, I actually have that broken down how I got to the $16,000. So what we were determining was, do you guys want that detailed analysis on fiscal if it affects our board less than $25,000? Or do you always want it? But what was discussed and agreed on was if it's over $25,000 effect, that I would include the entire analysis. And if you guys want, I have a copy of the complete analysis, and you guys can take a look at it and see what you guys decide you want to do.
If you're doing the analysis anyway, why not provide it to us?
Basically, I wanted to provide you guys with just a really high-end analysis for you guys to look at, just the most important details, not really getting into the nitty-gritty and giving you all the breakdowns. If that's what you guys want, we can look into that, into providing that to you. Do you guys want to see what the complete fiscal looks like? That way you can kind of look.
I don't.
You don't?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So Mike, I'm trying to understand this topic. So under, for example, this handout that you handed to us, each bill has an impact on the board with a financial impact, right?
I would do an analysis to see how much it would impact us,
Okay.
yes.
So perhaps we could just get that impact, financial impact in a column here. And then if anybody is interested in a breakdown, you have it anyways, and we can just request it ad hoc or as needed. Is that appropriate? Legal?
Yeah, legal.
That can be included in the analysis. I think what I heard, though, is that all the bill analyses will contain a fiscal impact statement, but it will not provide the full breakdown unless the amount of impact is over $25,000. Then there'd be an addendum or a separate analysis of how that figure was arrived at.
Correct.
Which is entirely appropriate, unless the board wants that level of detail for items that have a minor or relatively minor fiscal impact.
That's what we were proposing. But what I heard from you is you want to actually add a column to the tracking grid
Exactly.
that shows, you just want the total amount of fiscal
If you're
impact.
going to do it anyways, might as well have it as a summary. Only if you're going to have it available already. Because if you already have it, it would be good for us to know this information, and then anything above 25, you can provide in more detail.
It is included in the fiscal analysis that's attached to 888 and 1659, as those are two bills that were introduced in 2018. Moving forward, when new bills are introduced that affect our board, I'll be doing an analysis similar to this for everything. And it will always have a fiscal analysis area that will just high level tell how much it would affect our board. For example, that 888 just says $16,000. But I think what we're trying to decide is how much detail do you want in that section? Do you want the complete breakdown if it's less than $25,000 impact? Or do you always want a complete breakdown, is the question.
Can we have the financial impact?
Yeah.
For under 25?
Oh, you want it for under 25?
But we don't want the detail. We
Oh.
just want the impact.
Yes, I will always include the impact,
Okay.
no matter what the effect is. It's just if it's over $25,000, I will provide a complete breakdown of how it affects us.
Any other questions or comments? Just a comment. It seems quite reasonable, because when we're talking the amount, while it might seem like a big amount, when we look at the overall budget of the board, that is probably the rationale for the selection of that particular figure.
That's correct.
Is everyone clear on that? Okay. All right, so then the next, thank you. I guess that's it, unless we have something on the rulemaking calendar, but the next issue that we discussed was our continued discussions on amending VN section 2530 and PT 2585, and that is the 75% annual pass rate. Ms. Gomez reported to our committee her findings about this issue, and she also presented a document. Ms. Gomez presented a document on proposed legislative language, or regulation language, I'm sorry. We do regulations, the other guys do legislation. Amending it to change to our annual pass rate of 75%. Now, it is a work in progress. That was a first draft, and we expect that work will be continued, further editing down that information. And then Ms. Gomez reported that they will be conducting, along with the Education Unit, a teleconference, which you heard her talk about, on March 1st to discuss how they will implement these new future regulations. And then we went over the rulemaking calendar, and we discussed, how that looked, and if anyone has any ideas about any additional information we might want to include in either that or any of other documents and bill analysis, please let us know. And that concludes our meeting minutes. So there was something, is this, what document is this?
This is the tracking
That's
sheet.
the tracking grid.
Thank you. So would you take a look at principal at the top when you have it a moment? And we just need to make a change. Just, would you double check the spelling on that?
On which one?
The word principal.
Oh, principal.
Okay.
In the fourth column, it's PAL.
Do you want me to explain this tracking grid at all? Do you guys have, would you guys like that? So I created 2 grids, one for Senate, one for Assembly. Basically, you'll see in the bottom, some of those are gray. Those are all bills that we were following at the last board meeting that have either died or been gutted and amended, so they no longer pertain to the BVMPT or the Department of Consumer Affairs. Well, that's what the asterisk is for. So really, for the Assembly side, we're only following 3 bills on that side. For Senate, we're following 2. The next board meeting that we have will be a new legislative session, so we won't have any grayed out bills. And then we also added, to compare it to the last grid that we had in the last board meeting, we added 2 columns. One was BVMPT division affected. This shows you what part of the board is affected by that bill. And then it also includes the staff recommendation column, and that will match what's on the bill analysis, for example, 888 and 1659. And then the BVMPT committee position is what was decided during the Ledge-Reg committee meeting. Any questions on that grid? Is it clear?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Calloway.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
Any questions for the ledge? Good job. And Cheryl, there's no action on that, right?
There was a recommendations regarding board positions on these 2, 888 and 1659.
So it's the recommendation from the committee for these 2 positions?
You know what, let's wait and come back, let's not move on now, because we did ask for updates.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you for that information. Now, that's 25, A through D. So now that brings us to agenda item 26. And this is public comment, not on the agenda. Individuals may appear before the board at this time to discuss items not on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place it on the agenda of a future meeting. So we'll entertain comments from the public. Do board members have any comment?
This might be an opportune time to bring up Senate Bill 1003, kind of following up on the Ledge-Reg report. As you might know, this was a bill introduced in the Senate, Senator Roth, February 6th, so just a few weeks ago. And this relates to really the scope of practice of the Respiratory Care Board. And this follows some discussion and involvement involving the BVNPT, especially with regards to scope of practice. And this bill would give the exclusive authority by the Respiratory Care Board not only to regulate their own licensees, which is, of course, already a given, but further, it would be the exclusive province of the board to interpret all those tasks and services related to the delivery of respiratory care, and that certainly would include some of the current tasks currently within the scope of practice for vocational nursing, including things like adjusting O2 flow, administration of O2, certainly vent care and trach care. And I think in order to give us a fuller picture, Ms. Norton actually has a historical knowledge of this particular issue as it relates to our two boards.
Thank you. So I recall, it's got to be at least a year and a half, perhaps 2 years ago, and I don't know if we can just request a follow-up since this is items not on the agenda that we can't discuss. But I would like to request that we get a follow-up from that meeting. There was a joint meeting between the BVNPT and the Respiratory Care Board regarding this issue of the tasks and scope that is common to both LVNs and to respiratory therapy. So I would request that we place that on the next agenda so we can get a follow-up on that, because it does appear that the Respiratory Therapy Board is moving forward with their desire to take a bunch of respiratory therapy tasks out of our scope.
Yes.
I know there was a meeting with, when Dr. Brown was here, and the Respiratory Care Board, and I was on the phone, because I couldn't get there in person. So I know there was at least one meeting that was joint.
I think there were two. Because I believe one of them was at the Business Services Agency with Sonia. I don't know if Sonia was there. Maybe Sonia wasn't there. Yes, council was there and at that time. So we can put that on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss further. And hopefully by that time we could have analysis and actually get the information on the actual intent of their bill.
I would like to know the DCA's role, since both boards are under the province of Department of Consumer Affairs.
I wonder if Chris can answer that.
I'm concerned at this point because it's not agendized for discussion. So it would not be germane to the agenda item to have a lengthy discussion about this subject, other than perhaps to identify it as something that needs to be placed on a future agenda.
And then at that point, we would be able to ask DCA to come in and find out the answer to that particular question.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. So we will have that placed on the next agenda, next board meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. And the exec. Any other public comment or items that we want placed on the agenda? Seeing none, that brings us to agenda item, well, actually 27, which is similar. Yes?
I did want to see if we could get a budget report in the next board meetings.
Okay. Yes. So we'll add a budget report to the next board meeting. So, any other future agenda items?
I noticed in the minutes that we had a question about any applications denied based on a default in a federal loan, which initially the feedback was that probably hadn't happened with our board, but we were just going to verify that if possible, since a new law had passed stating that we could not deny license based on default in a federal student loan.
Okay, so that's one thing we can look at, a future agenda item also. Any other? Seeing none, hearing none, that brings us to agenda item 28.
I would move to adjourn.
I would second it.
We've got a motion and a second. Do we need to vote? Nope. Meeting's adjourned at 2:28. Thank you.